The wrong place.
You're fine.
Welcome to the Provo Municipal Council work session. We are convened in the City Center Conference Room at 1:06 p.m. on Tuesday, November 13th. This meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube, Provo City Council, where it will also be available for on-demand viewing. Please be aware that the microphones in the room pick up the noise of paper and other rustling objects. Further, be aware that microphones can pick up side conversations. We'll begin with the roll call. Cliff?
Liz Stratton. Ryan Jones.
Kay Van Buren.
Dave Mag. George Hanley.
Elizabeth Van
Terry Winterton. David Harding. Bryce Mumford. George Stewart.
Dave Sewell.
Mayor Cafusi.
Wayne Parker.
Thank you very much. Kay Van Buren is offered to give our opening prayer.
Heavenly Father, we bow our heads to Thee. We thank Thee for our blessings. We're thankful for this beautiful day. We're thankful for the opportunity to be together. We thank Thee for the city of Provo and all those who serve and work and make it the place that it is. We ask a blessing to be upon our discussions today and our conversations, that we will make decisions that are for the good of Provo and the good of the people who live here. We ask Thee to bless those who work and serve and give their in danger as they serve. Ask Thee to bless them, that all will be safe today and be blessed to return home to their families with all is well. Heavenly Father, help us to strive to keep the values and the goodness of this city in all that we do. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Mayor, or Wayne, before we go on to our items of business here, do you know anything about have we got the update? We're up 34 votes in the
34, and Wayne can tell you a little bit. We called Amanda. Wayne went down and talked to Amanda to see how many more ballots are left out there to be counted. So go ahead, Wayne.
Okay, just quickly, so the county still has remaining 27,000 ballots that have not yet been counted. 18,000 of those are provisionals, and by statute, those can't begin to be counted until all the other ballots have been cast and a vote recorded. And so, again, the sense is that there will be another release by the county on Friday. That may be all the rest of the ballots, or it may not be all the rest of the ballots. So, so there'll be another release on Friday, and then there will be a final release just before the canvass a week from today. And so that's where we're at. So so we've had 18,000 ballots cast in Provo on the bond, particularly, and so again, if you think about last municipal election and the mayoral race, we had just over 14,000 ballots cast. So it's a pretty substantial increase in voter turnout in Provo. And again, if you make the assumption that we're roughly 15 to 20% of the registered voters in the county, about 20%, then 20% of those remaining 27,000 ballots should be attributable to Provo. So there's somewhere around 4,000 to 5,000 probably remaining ballots to yet be counted. So it's way too early, just as it was last week. It was way too early to get depressed. It's way too early to do a victory dance on the steps of City Hall.
Except Chief Miguel, we got to keep him
I know,
we
got to keep him under control.
He was already, his blood pressure was through the roof this morning.
Yeah. So anyway, it's your prototypical election nail biter. So we'll just have to watch it as new results come out. We'll have at least two more. Well, should just have two more releases: one on Friday, one on Tuesday.
It's prototypical, but it's in slow motion.
It does feel slow motion. Yes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the update.
That's the latest.
One other item of business: we have a birthday on Friday, and Bryce, we need some help.
All right.
Oh, somebody's had a birthday, our gregarious George dear. May Father in heaven bless him through all the coming years. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear George. Happy birthday to you. Thank you. At least it wasn't George. Save that for next year.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
We will move to item number 1, approval of minutes, and that'll be for October 25th, 2018, our joint zoning and housing committee minutes. Mr. Hardy, it says you requested several changes.
Yeah, notice shown on the screen. We're going to. Sorry. This is a joint meeting, joint committee meeting with zoning and housing. There was just some wording of short-term rentals. I just suggested a couple changes I felt that better reflected what we meant to say. And it's all contained in that first sub-bullet point. So we actually define short-term rentals and long-term rentals rather than just putting STR. And then the other thing is, instead of saying also long-term rentals are being unlicensed and potentially fly under the radar, it's saying that many are not unlicensed and some of those are intentional. So it was just qualifying it a little bit.
Thank you. Now with this one, do we vote if we were in attendance because of the approving of the minutes, or do we vote because we read the minutes? And that's a question that I've got. Because how many council members were at that meeting? 4 of you. So that's why one reason that we noticed it. So is it make you 4 eligible since you were at the meeting to approve the minutes and we don't, the others that weren't at the meeting? Brian, help me.
That's come up several times before, and the answer is simply that by approving the minutes, you are saying that they are the official record of the meeting. You don't have to have been there to vote in the affirmative for that. It's not. It has happened in the past that council members have not felt comfortable voting to say that it's the official record, but it really doesn't have any impact other than to say that for purposes of keeping city records, this is the record of the meeting.
Thank you very much for that clarification. So we will call for a vote. Those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Before we proceed with the agenda, I'd like to remind those in attendance that although this is a public meeting, only presenters and those seated at the council table may speak unless otherwise invited. We'll begin with item number 2, a report from Downtown Provo Inc. and Kevin Peterson. You're up. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. A presentation's hard because there's just so much I do every day. Try to think, what do we highlight? And so one thing that is not in this is the work and energy we've put into the bond. And so I'm just stoked to see a little bit of an update. By the way, I once interviewed to teach at the MTC right after my mission, and I used the word stoked in my interview, and they told me that's why I didn't get the job. So hope that didn't offend anyone. It's been a treat to go around with the mayor and Chief Miguel and Ferguson, and I've done neighborhood meetings with a few of you, with Dave Harding and some others, and I'm eager to see what it turns out to be. I'm going to start just by kind of highlighting 4 things that really mean a lot to our program and what we try to accomplish with Downtown Provo Inc. And these are kind of just 4 overall principles that guide us, and then we'll just cover some of the things that we've been doing to meet some of these principles. Now, before I dive into it, one of the things that helps us make decisions on a daily basis was some great wisdom I gained from our Mayor Curtis. During the election, when we were visiting with all the candidates, we asked each candidate, Mayor Curtis expended a lot of political capital on the BRT, and it's something we needed, but it was a hard fight to fight. And I asked each candidate, what will you expend political capital on? And everyone had great answers. And when I went to visit with Mayor Curtis during the election, I said, if you were to run again, what would you expend political capital on? And he had a very unique answer. And it was, every day I wake up and I knock on a door. And if the door doesn't open, I knock on the next door. And if that door doesn't open, I knock on the next. And it may be a door that hasn't opened in 15 years, but that's the direction I go. And that's something I hadn't considered. I think so often people in my position or in other positions like it, you get really excited about an idea that means a lot to you, and you keep beating on that door until it opens, and you end up getting nothing done. So we have a lot of projects that are always going on, and some doors open, and that's the direction we run. So the first thing we discuss is residential awareness. We have an outstanding downtown. We have an outstanding business community, restaurants, environment down there, retailers. And I ran the shop Unhinged on Center Street for 4 years before I had this job. And it was wild because people would come in and they'd say, this is such a cool shop. Are you guys new? And I would say, we've been here for 4 years. Where have you been? And I think that is sort of the general consensus with our population. Is most people who live here, maybe there was a time in their life where they did go downtown, but that time isn't right now. And most people who make comments about what our downtown is like haven't been there in 10 years. And so raising awareness with our residents is one huge objective for us. Second one is tourism awareness. Our star is rising right now. We're getting a lot of attention on the national scale for things that we're doing, and whether it's in the startup industry, the tech industry, and the arts. And so people are coming. We have the new convention center here on Center Street, and so we have the opportunity to work a lot with Explore Utah Valley, their new name, to bring conventions to town, other visitors to town, where we get to show them what we have to offer. And there's a few specific things that we do that we're going to talk about to help raise awareness for these tourism groups. Creating a space. When I was at Unhinged, I was able to really cultivate the inside Unhinged. I wanted more than just retail, and so I reached out to my barber and I said, hey, we'd love to collaborate with you. So we rented the space upstairs to him, and it really created a neat environment where people would come in and there was always something happening. Even when retail was slow, people were getting haircuts, you know? And if his haircuts were slow, people were always shopping. And so we together were able to lift each other. The problem is I wanted to be able to do that outside of Unhinged. We want that to happen in all of our downtown. And so the difficulty is when you're running a restaurant or a retail space, you're not able to go out and paint a mural on your neighbor's building or to have an event downtown that brings people. It's difficult to do more than just run your business, and that's where we try to step in, to really create a space that's a destination. You know, I have an uncle we had dinner with recently, and he was making a comment, you know, Provo had an opportunity to get the University Mall, and they really blew it, and blah, blah, blah. And it was interesting because, you know, if you're to compare this neighbor to the north and something like a University Mall, you know what they don't have? There's not a single place in that city where you'd park your car and spend an evening, to walk to a restaurant and to go do some entertainment and then have a dessert. And we're just grateful that we have our downtown, and it is that destination. And it's a place that we will always have because of its historic nature. And I'm glad that that's an option that we have. Strategic growth. We work a lot with developers. Anytime a space becomes vacant, we know about it before it happens so that we can help strategically fill it. It usually takes a big picture to say, hey, you know what? I know you guys really want to open a pizza place, but I actually know that 2 other pizza places are also opening next month and they're within the same proximity. Maybe it's better for you, landlord, if you get a soda bar instead. And so we're just there to fill the gap. Whether it's new development, projects, events downtown, really my job is not to open a retail shop, and I'm not the one out there with the paintbrush painting a mural, and I'm not the one creating policy for downtown. We're just here to kind of facilitate the conversation and connect the dots. So the first place this happened, we presented when we were here 7-8 months ago, we presented a little bit on the first place I stepped in to fill the gap. It was the first week that I had this job, and we went to one of the updates for the UTA construction project, and we were discussing public art. We wanted to have art on this new public transit system, and because of regulations with how money is spent, UTA is not allowed to spend money on public art because of issues with choosing certain artists and content and how much they pay, and it just gets them into trouble. So the only way it can happen is if a third party steps in. So again, who's that third party? And so I became the, whatever, sacrificial lamb, I guess. And it was definitely far harder than I expected, and I probably wouldn't do it again. But it's essentially done. So we wanted to show you some of the stations. We drove around with the Parks and Rec team, and we wanted to pick plants that were native to Utah. So each station is represented by a plant that's native to Utah. I physically was snipping little clippings, and then we had a photo shoot, and anyhow, it was a crazy process working with construction teams and subcontractors, also subcontractors and subcontractors under them. And anyhow, in the end, we're really pleased with what's come. So this is the Aspen station. We did end up having 1 or 2 stations that don't necessarily have super native plants, but most of them are. This is a maple station. This is an oak station down by Novell, I believe. We ultimately have 11 stations in Provo. 3 of them are at BYU, and we handled the other 9. These are the only ones that have glass so far. As of yesterday, we have a few more stations that are still rolling out the art. Another example of something we do, this is actually an event where we're not necessarily filling the gap, but we run the whole thing. We run the art stroll. The art stroll happens every month. It's every first Friday. And it's really just an opportunity to get people from the community down into our downtown. We have some that are professional galleries, and we have others that are just maybe retailers who set up a small gallery section. It's something that happens in a lot of communities, and in the past 1.5 years, we've had an awesome opportunity to grow it in enormous ways. We have roughly 20 businesses that participate each month, and artists in each of those spaces. And not only artists in those spaces, but we have people outside selling hot chocolate and doing sketches and performing music. And it's a really fun event that happens every first Friday that we get to help facilitate. This is an example of the flyer we create. This is a map that goes out each month, and it highlights all the businesses and the artists and the address so that people can know where to go. It's right in the downtown area. And one thing we did about 6 months ago to really amplify engagement is we've created this opportunity to go to 4 different highlighted spots. These 4 highlighted spots are usually something extra unique. Maybe it's a new business that opened up, and so we want to encourage people to go there. So if you go to these 4 spots and you fill out your information, you're entered to win a raffle. And we have collaboration from the businesses downtown, like Google. They donated to Google Home, and Pioneer Book donates gift cards for Pioneer Book. And so the raffle, we have a grand prize winner, and we have a few other winners. And so we get between 150 and 400 raffle entries each month. And so those are people who actually go to all these different spots, and they get them stamped. Each month, we not only have a few highlighted businesses, but we also have our monthly mural. And we'll talk a little bit more about the monthly mural in a minute. This is an example, a little video that we have on our Instagram that highlights what an art stroll is like. So I'm just going to play it, and it's just a little stories highlight. So these are highlighting the different venues and the artists that get featured. It's not always art, but sometimes we have food that gets catered, and people sell more than just art, but other things they create. When you get your card stamped, you not only are entered into the raffle, but there's usually gift cards, free flowers, free whatever as a part of it. This is an example of one of the artists that does textile work. This is a new business, Lulu's Crafty Corner downtown. So we made them one of the highlighted spots people had to go to, and it created a huge line of all these people that were able to see that space downtown. This is an artist that does little portraits for people. He set up in Unhinged. And then some additional kind of guidance that we created is we created these flags. So these flags mount in a 45-degree flagpole mount on the building. So this goes out in front of each location that participates in the art stroll. So the hope is you can stand in on Center Street and look down the street, and you can see these flags so you know who's a part of the program that night.
And how many people attend that usually? Thank you.
It depends on the weather, and it depends on who's visiting. But anywhere between 500 and 1,200 is usually who's there. The Lincoln Lunch is another huge part of what we do. Yeah?
Who's visiting? What do you mean by who's visiting?
The patrons from the community that come out and see the artists that actually walk business to business.
Okay. And that changes month to month?
Yeah, it kind of depends. Often it'll be friends and family of one of the artists. Sometimes it'll be like a BFA show for a student, and so a lot of the artists promote themselves, and so it really depends on who's showing where, and that always changes who's attending.
Thank you.
Yeah. I got a bunch of stuff to show, but I guess what's more important is your questions are answered, so please feel free to ask them. The Lincoln Lunch is another huge part of our program, and that, when I was at Unhinged, I never went. We were DPI members, but I never went. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of the businesses that really need this interaction, they're really busy running a business. And so we took a survey of the businesses to find out, what do you guys want from this? How important is it to you? And the people who attend, it's crucial for them. And they gave us some feedback on what they like about it. So they like to be able to explore downtown and see other spaces. So we rotate around what our venues are so that business owners get a chance to see. Like, we had one recently at the Covey, and a lot of the people said, holy smokes, I didn't even know this was a part of the Covey Center. And it was an opportunity for Paul to really show off the facilities and let everyone know what they have to offer. We do that, the Marriott, the New Skin Building, Pioneer Book, Startup Building, Bright Building, lots of buildings that let people show what we have. Aside from that, new food. The food vendors that provide, a lot of them are donated, and they donate it as part of their membership. A lot of these businesses don't have cash on hand to pay membership. Because they're small businesses, and so sometimes they donate in other ways. So they'll cater one of these lunches, which is worth $500 to $700, and they donate that food to help us run. And often it'll be a new business to downtown, and it's an opportunity that we give for them to show their menu to a new group of people. And in these events, we have presentations. The presentations are just relevant policy. We talked a lot about the bond. We talked a lot about what that meant. The one when we had at the Covey, we gave tours of the building. We gave tours of the needs so people could really understand why this bond was even on the ballot. Aside from that, we talk about events, street closures, construction. We have UTA present. We just give relevant information to the businesses to set up these meetings so they can all be in the same room because they've all got the same questions.
Glenn, I've got
Yeah.
I have a tenant, actually, he's a tenant of mine, and he loves to go to those lunches, and I don't think he's a member.
Yeah, and there are a few people that do show up and they're not paying members yet.
And so that's what you do, if they come, go to the lunches, then hopefully you're hitting them up for that.
That is the goal, yeah,
Okay.
is we can hit them up for membership. We do have a few that attend, and often they're people who have something to contribute, or maybe it's a new business and we want them to see what we have to offer. But getting members to pay, yeah, that's a huge part of my job. It's a huge part of my job because, yeah, we get them to pay, that's great, but guess what? By the time we get it all figured out and we do a lot of these things that I'm showing you today, like these restaurant guides, suddenly a year has passed and we need to get them to pay again. So it does take a lot of my time. You know, my whole background has been in sales, and I like the opportunity to go into the businesses, show the value, and get them to pay. But you know what? It means there's less productivity that happens because I spend so much time doing it. But as we're growing, we're able to hire additional staff, and we're fortunate right now that we now have 2 employees that help me, and it does allow us to get a little more done as we're beginning to grow. The restaurant guide. This is a tool we use to raise awareness with tourism, and you guys have seen these before, but I actually have a blister on this finger because I folded these by hand this morning because they're brand new, super fresh. In fact, if you notice, there's one restaurant on there that actually doesn't open until Friday. So there's a new one that's replacing oregano. You may have been wondering. It's called Salt. It's the same guy that has Oteo, which moved in a few months ago into the Designs building, and it's a new concept for him. Not only does this show where the restaurants are, but one thing we added recently is we added a key that shows who's open late, who serves alcohol, who delivers. A few things that get asked frequently is who can do these things. And this is an awesome tool for the hotels and BYU when they have things going on and so on. Yeah?
So if I was a visitor or even a resident and wanted to see this online,
yeah,
you've got it online too.
Yeah, it's not very user-friendly yet, but it is online. Yeah, the county has it on their website. We're working on making it more interactive. We're also working right now, we're creating another one of these for entertainment. So it's gonna have public art venues, entertainment like velour, comedy sports, axe throwing, you know, karaoke, virtual reality, all the things you can do is another one of these we want to create. but we want them to be a little more interactive that we can upload into our app. We just haven't been able to build that quite yet. But yeah, we're working on it.
Are all these members in here paying members? Do they pay to be on here?
No, this is every venue, but we monetize certain things like the ads. So the photos you see in there, people pay an additional fee to get that. Coca-Cola, Explore Utah Valley, and then each restaurant that's featured, they all pay for the cost of producing this.
I'm going to go get personal here.
Yeah?
Another one of my tenants is not on here.
Are you
But
sure?
it's not on the map, and maybe that's why.
Is it Bombay House?
It's Bombay.
They're on there. They're just not on the map, I believe.
I was looking for them, and I don't see them listed.
That'd be a horrible misstep.
Under, first one under Asian.
Thank
Number
you.
16.
They're
Just
there.
gotta make sure that they pay my rent. I appreciate that.
Yes, they're there.
Thank you.
And yeah, it's just they're not on the map. So there is a little asterisk next to it that indicates that they're just outside the visual map. So they have to follow the address listed. So far this year, we've distributed 15,000 of these. We've done a print of 7,500 twice, and we're totally out, which is why I just had to print these and fold them this morning. So 15,000 of them have gone out, distributed. Do you recognize my hands in some of those photos, by the way? I was the model. But yeah, 15,000 have gone out so far, and our next 10,000 should be done Friday-ish, and those will go out to all the vendors that distribute them. The weekly email, this is another huge part of our outreach to the residents. So the weekly email is just an email that we put together each week that talks about what's happening downtown. Now, we don't always highlight everything that's happening. For example, the Covey always has something great going on. So what we'll do is we'll talk about an opening night or maybe a special show. Or Velour. Velour always has live bands playing. We don't always feature them, but if they have some sort of special band or special event, they get featured. So this is just an email that goes out to the residents each week to let them know, hey, did you know this cool thing's happening or this new business is opening? So this is an example. This is a little video I'm going to share. This is the one that went out this week, or went out last week for this weekend. So this is what it looks like on your phone, and it is not playing. Uh-oh. There we go. So each of these images and links you can click, and it takes you to the Facebook page or website of the event or activity. There's usually 5 or 6 things we feature. And what's important is that we're continuing to grow our email list. Right now we have about 6,200 emails. We do what we can at every event, like at the Halloween trick-or-treating, which we're going to talk about in a second. We hand out free tote bags. Those tote bags market Downtown Provo, but we exchange them for free for an email. So people sign up for our email list, we give out those tote bags. We get email lists when we sponsor things like the farmers market, and there's a lot of places that we do where we build our list of emails. Yeah.
So Gordon, I love that because people will call the office and they'll say, is this centered towards children? But as the past 6 months, you guys have really upped your game. You've got something for kids on every single one, something for the young professionals, kind of more centered towards your different demographics you're reaching out to, and so thank you for adding those in there.
Yeah, we try to. You know, it is the demographics of Provo, so we try to hopefully cater to. And it depends on the week too. Sometimes it is kid-friendly stuff. This next thing is the shop hop. This is the thing that's actually happening right now. You just saw it in the email I showed you. It's going on, as you see on the cover of that, to the 17th. So this is just a fun little activity for people to do downtown. We treat it like a passport. If you open it up, you draw your little portrait if you want to, like a passport, and then you go visit the different shops and you get them stamped. I believe, I got to remember, I think there's 17 winners that are chosen. There's one grand prize winner that wins a bunch of stuff, and then lots of people just win gift cards to the shops by participating. This is just another event that we use to try to get people downtown to see some of the new spaces. Just so that they can kind of see what's unique about them and what they have to offer. And this is actually a text I got at 10:37 this morning about, went to McKay, who helps orchestrate it, about the shop hop. Let's see. Just want to let you know that we are seeing steady traffic from the shop hop. Lots of feels from people who say they love downtown. Already had one of them, one of the $20 gift certificates redeemed, made a new friend, and will be a returning customer. We love this sort of promotion. It's an excellent program that's got people in, and we're receiving the love. This is Scott from Pioneer Book, from activities like this that get people down into the community. Halloween, this is another event that we do facilitate ourselves, and we organize by letting the businesses know, by letting the community know through our outreach of our Facebook and our Instagram and our email list. And then we go out and I buy a massive trailer full of pumpkins from a local farmer. We go out to the stubs, because I ran the farmer's market for a couple years, and so I know a lot of the farmers around. And so every 31st is usually the last day they sell any pumpkins anyway. So I always make a deal. I buy the rest of what they have, and I pull it behind my truck, and we park it in the gravel lot outside in front of the convention center. And we give those pumpkins out for free on that day of trick-or-treating. So it's just another appeal to get people downtown and engaged. So these are just a couple of the photos. It was really well attended this year. It was outstanding. And this is just a great event because it gets people to walk into the businesses, and we give the businesses a heads up, and we say, hey, look, this is your opportunity to attach a little coupon, you know, get some information to these families about your business so that they can return. That's really what it takes, is just people getting exposed to what we have to offer downtown. Another fun new mural. Here's the pumpkin trailer right towards the end. We ended up getting rid of every single pumpkin, and then the best costume,
Yeah.
the UVX.
He was on campus.
And you know, what I do is really difficult to quantify in presentations like this, because I'm showing you pictures of like events, but the biggest value that comes from our program is when we're just there to fill the gap, because we know, hey, this business is struggling, and we know this business is struggling. In fact, there are two right now, and I'm not going to say who they are necessarily because they're still figuring this out, but there are two businesses downtown that are struggling, and they both reached out to me for help. And I said, hey, you guys have similar interests, why don't you guys collaborate on rent? And so it sounds like they're actually going to be merging their two businesses to try to save some costs. And just little phone calls like that that happen every day, that's really where the value comes from. And it's really hard to say, this is how many times I've done that this year. But because I know it's important to try to quantify, I hired my two renters to come out and count everyone. So they came out and they counted everyone that could walk. This is not including stroller kids. So that's roughly how many people came downtown for the trick-or-treating last week, or whatever that was.
How long a period was it?
From 3 to 6, 3 hours.
That surprises me. I feel like I passed more than that many people. Just
I know, I thought so too. I thought so too. Yeah, it was really busy, especially like when people are waiting for the crosswalk, it would build up, and there's just so many people they don't fit on the sidewalk, and then the light would change and they would all
Is
they
that
would
the
all
biggest
go.
turnout claim for this event?
I don't know, I've never counted the people
But just
before.
by overall general eyeing it?
Yeah, I think so. I've only run it for 2 years, so
It seemed huge.
yeah, it was really good. It was awesome. And it was just good. I mean, you know, we're going to talk about this more in a second, but in this new world of media, marketing is just an ever-changing machine. And with social media and all the ways that Facebook tries to monetize everything they do, I mean, I have a small clothing company. We have 26,000 followers on Instagram, but none of them see my stuff anymore. Now you have to pay Facebook for them to see it. It's just, there's always a new trick to get people to see what you're doing, and it's hard. And the best thing we can do is to have events like this, and like the photo you saw by the murals like that, and people market for you because they take pictures at the event and they put it on their social media, and everyone goes, what is this, where are you? And that's really what kind of stirs excitement in a place like this. Yeah?
I'm going to do something here, you have to go, but this is awesome. I love seeing all the things you've done. We're supposed to be in 30 minutes. Can you talk about some of the things that you're going to be doing in the future?
Yeah, totally.
If you can switch to some
Sure.
of that. And then
I'm going to show you one more, and then I have a list of the things in the future. We did that Bikes and Treks event. That was fun. The end. This is one, in fact, let me go back a little. A huge thing, vacancies. We talked about it. A lot of it's a perception. New Skin had a building. They use it for storage. Turns out it's cheaper than using a storage unit just to buy a building and fill it with your junk. So that's what they did, but it looked really poor. It was at 241 West Center, right by TaylorMade, and it's a perceived vacancy. And that's a problem we have to battle downtown, are these perceived vacancies. So we partnered up with them. We filled it with an interactive LED installation, And this is just a little video that explains
Downtown
it.
Provo, we have a really fun new project we wanted to tell you about, and it's a new interactive art display. There is a property at 241 West Center Street. This art installation we're calling Provo Lights, and it's a wall of LEDs that you can interact with. And there's a phone number that you text to activate certain videos. Some have audio, some are just video. So the phone number, I hope you're ready. It's 415-98.
Anyhow, you don't need to call it. This is an example. Each light acts as a pixel, so you can see the hearts here. So at night, you can actually see videos. It's like a low resolution screen, and you text the word love, and this is what happens. There's about 300 code words currently, and you have to figure them out, and they animate different videos with audio. 3,300 people have texted this month that display. So the monthly mural program has been huge. We do a mural every month downtown. It's been outstanding. We've done a lot of work with the construction. That's probably been more work has been spent on the construction advocacy than anything else since I last presented. Future projects. We're working on the kiosks downtown. The kiosks downtown, the little green pylons you put things on, they have light fixtures on them. Who knew? No one, apparently. There's no power to them. So we partnered with a group at BYU. We're bringing in solar panels to illuminate those kiosks so that they can be more useful throughout the night. String lighting, we just talked a little bit about the string lighting, but some of the string lighting over Center Street is awesome, but some of them have quit working, they've drooped a little, and we want to improve those and extend them. So we've gotten a quote, we're going to extend them up University and Freedom, just to continue the walkability. Additional policy updates, we've done a lot with policy this year. We made that parking document that kind of formally said how the businesses feel, and that's come in useful. We also created a document that said how we feel about the bond, and that's come in useful. Instagram takeover, businesses will take over the Instagram, show what their business has to offer. T-shirt exchange program is going to be for this Christmas. You'll see that roll out. We're part of creating that. Small Business Saturday is a big program for us, and the Christmas lights. Turns out Parks and Rec has extra Christmas lights because it's expensive to hang them all, so I'm taking them. We're going to hang them. So those are the things that we're working on. But I would recommend to stay in the loop. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Facebook. The mural program is something that's been really received well, and we're excited. We still have about 7 months left in that, and then I think we'll renew to do it again for another 12 months. What sort of questions do you have? I had a section here about financials that we brushed over, but
this has been awesome for me. I've had the opportunity to go to the monthly meetings, and I'm sure that you can feel it. This is a different feel than we've ever had in our downtown. As we began this program, it was a challenge to begin it, and then we hit a skid mark for a while. Things didn't happen as much, and this is really exciting to see all the things going on.
I've been involved with downtown since 1994, one way or the other. I've never seen anything like this. You have done an incredibly great job. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And you know, I just will tell you, I had a meeting with Wayne a little bit ago, and I sat down and I just said, Wayne, I love my job. And Wayne just said, I know you do.
No doubt about that.
You know, and I think that's what makes the difference. It's something I do really care about, and as I go shopping downtown and visit restaurants and I go get my boots repaired, I'm in Tony's shop. And I get to update them. And it's just me living my life, but now I get to do it full time. So.
Some people love their job and don't do it too well.
Yeah, that's true.
Do a great job.
I appreciate it.
And I think right now we have a real opportunity. We have been in kind of a funk here with the construction on University Avenue for a long time, and now with that coming to an end, I think this is an opportunity for Twin to really get going and say, this is what we've got downtown. Come see it. Christmas time. And I think this is critical for you. It's an important part, a great opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are you hearing from the businesses that you're interacting with? What can Provo do to be a better partner?
So when I started, the two concerns were parking and panhandling. And parking, I mean, we're excited to see when the new parking administrator is able to start working and what sort of power we can give him to work with me and the businesses downtown. Because it's crucial to empower this person to really help with our growth is bananas. And this position is so imperative to the businesses downtown. That is number one, and it still is. Number two right now is the construction. Panhandling has kind of slipped away, and it's not a big concern, but construction. And it's tough because the businesses that struggle, right now they don't do a lot for themselves. The businesses that are struggling are not members of DPI, and they don't do a lot to promote themselves. They don't run an Instagram, they don't run a Facebook, and so it's hard because my job's here to advocate for them, and I want to help them. But we do see the people that get engaged. They are a part of the programs. They're a part of our program. They collaborate with our community. They're doing fine. They're doing well. So there is a lot of help we still need to give because construction, no doubt, has been a giant pain. But
one last thing, as we see more and more residential units built and fill up with people, hopefully there's a way to interact with them in a positive way to get them shopping and working together with your community.
yes, yeah. One thing we didn't show, we picked up 2 new $10,000 donors. BYU, I think was right around when I presented last. I don't know if I told you that. BYU, they've been a part of our program for a long time, but they've never been a part of our program until now. So they pay $10,000 a year to help fund our organization, and so does PEG Developers. PEG Developers, because they're bringing in the residents, and it's been important for us to work with them on a regular basis as they bring these people in and as they try to help make our downtown better. It's important to have feedback both ways between them and us. So we're pretty well connected. And currently, as I'm also the downtown neighborhood chair, and so I do, in that capacity, work with all the developers in the downtown area, and we get to sort of coach them along the way. I'm also now on the design review committee, so we talk a lot about, you know, how they're impacting our community and the way they look with their buildings as well.
One other thing I think is important to mention now is Quinn's looking to expand the operation and get some more help in that for him to continue on with some of the things that you're doing. And so he's looking for a little help with that.
Yeah. So we've hired someone. She's been outstanding. We just hired another person on Saturday as a photographer. They're just both pretty part-time. But yeah, as we take on more projects, there's a lot more we can do. If I just had people and money, but I mean, that's gradually happening. And it's a good slow growth. So we're getting better and better. Yeah. Yep. Another thing, we have additional revenue sources now that we haven't had before. So that's been really helpful.
George, do we know what the construction deadline is?
19th of December.
Of December.
19th of December is the done date. They have what they call punch items that will probably happen in the spring after it warms up, some little landscaping, this and that. But that's conservative because, I mean, I've heard December 3rd is when they'll be done downtown. But the whole project, Provo and Orem, December 19th. Yeah, that's been, I'm not a vulgar person, but talking with these construction workers, there's been a lot of angry text exchanged between them and I on many occasions, and we're still buddies today, but it's been a lot of battling to make sure good things happen.
When you say done possibly downtown early, does that mean the buses are actually going to be in the lanes, the dedicated lanes? And, okay.
Yeah.
The stops will be fully functional and everything.
Correct. Yep.
Are we having a party for that?
Good, we'll be party.
I'm curious to know if you have any sense of the UVX. I mean, I know what the ridership numbers look like. They're saying
they're awesome.
Like, 4 to 5 times more riders than previously. Have you seen that impact downtown? Are you feeling that that's bringing more people downtown?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I haven't necessarily noticed yet, but the buses are full. There's a lot of use, and I do see a lot of people at the stops. I don't know that I've seen them walking into the stores necessarily yet, but I think a lot of it is just the fact that the stations are not up and running properly yet. That'll really help kind of put the cherry on top. Actually, the cherry on top was the glass art because it's really cool. I actually said, can this be the last thing? So it's like the cherry on top, and they were like, sure, whatever.
Quinn, thank you. Is there anything else you want to say before we shut you off here? And
no, not necessarily. I mean, I just need to emphasize, this is just a report so you know what we've been doing, but I need to emphasize how crucial the financial support of the city has been. You know, especially in a time of construction, it's really difficult for businesses who are struggling to pay extra money for a program like ours. And so when I'm able to say, hey, look, it's only, so our prices are either $500 a year or $250 a year, depending on if they want to come to the lunches, because some businesses don't. And when I shared that with Bill, who's the liaison, he works with a lot of communities like myself, he said, that is so low, how do you afford it? And it's because I'm able to tell them, when they make that payment, the city matches it. And that's how our funding works. For those of you who don't know, I don't just get a check from you guys. I submit reports to Dixon that say what sponsorships and support we've received, and then the city matches it. And so if I'm not raising money, I don't get your money. But when I raise the money, it helps cover our costs of operation because you guys match what the small businesses pay. And so
you match up to a certain amount.
Right. It's up to $75,000 is the cap. Yep, correct. Yeah, so that's been crucial. That's one thing I would add, is just so that you understand how crucial and helpful that has been for the businesses downtown to be able to afford these services and operations. Yeah.
Thank you, Quinn.
Yep, thanks.
And your meetings are always the third Wednesday? If anyone wishes to attend.
Our board meetings are every third Wednesday, yes. Every third Wednesday, 8 a.m. Yeah.
And we've moved around a little bit, but
we do.
Usually it's at the Wells Fargo, and it's exciting. You can see the excitement. So thank you.
Yeah.
We'll now move on to item number 3, a presentation on OnBase and new council agenda management software, and Elizabeth Vanderwerf and Amanda is helping too. Thank you.
I'll just resituate. Okay, so council members, we've recently updated the council software for agendas, and you may have noticed in the agenda noticing emails that we've sent out, we've done some communication about that. You've had the opportunity to utilize those new sites during your review of materials. I was informed at the start of this meeting that it seems there's some issue with the internal guest network, and so some council members were having some trouble accessing the sites during this meeting. We've submitted a ticket to our IS department, so we'll be working out. There's a lot of those little hiccups that have come up. But mainly today, we wanted to just give a quick overview for the ways that you can access materials and agendas with the new system. And that will be for both council members as well as any members of the public who are watching. In addition to this presentation, we'll be posting some materials on the council blog with some screenshots and just materials that'll walk people through that process. So let's see. This is the site that you'd be familiar with seeing, SIRE Public Access or publicdocuments.provo.org. You can see we've updated that with some language to redirect people to the new site. And I will give you a little more detail about the future of this site and what will be happening there. One thing I'll bring your attention to, so the main things that we use on this site are the meetings tab, where we have the lists of meetings that go back until 2013 when the city started using SIRE. And then there's this documents tab where there are a few categories of public records that are available there. So with the new system, those two components of the SIRE Public Access site have moved to individual sites through OnBase. And so what we've done to kind of preserve that easy of access, on each of the new sites, we've placed a link to the other site. So if you're on the document site, you can still access agendas and it'll redirect you here. If you're looking at meeting agendas and you want to look up an ordinance or a resolution, you can click on this documents link there. So this is just showing what the new sites look like for each of those. And the URLs are documents.provo.org and agendas.provo.org. So a couple of things to note with these new sites. So we've been able to migrate over all of the historic meeting data. So any council meetings that occurred in October 2018 and prior. So those are all available on the new site. And the historic data that's still on the Sire Public Access, that will be up for a little bit longer. But ultimately, all of the services that utilize that site will be moved to new programs as part of Provo 360. So we just want to, I guess, make it clear that those materials, there's an expiration date on when they'll be available. But they are available through the new interface. As far as the new OnBase agenda site, so there are a couple of things I just wanted to show as far as accessing historic data and documents. That'll be a little bit different than materials that are published once we've moved to the new software. So these are all related to that. So I think what we'll do next is, Bryce, if you'll click on that, double click on that image, it should pull up the website. If you double click on this image, it's a hyperlink, so it should. Put it there. Actually, can I borrow the mouse pad and all? Okay, so if you look here, a couple of differences with the new site. This homepage shows recent and upcoming meetings. With our old site, it would only show meeting agendas that had been published. So one thing that's really nice about that is when residents or council members are wondering about when the next meeting is, you can actually see the next meeting is the Board of Canvassers meeting, which is 1 week from today. So it will show some of the items that have, some of the meetings that have been scheduled in the future, as well as some of the recent meetings. So you can see our 2 meetings today are here, a meeting that was last week and a meeting that's next week. So as we start the new year, that'll be a really nice tool for both council members and residents to have that visual reminder. For the historic meetings or any meetings that were before the oldest meeting here, you can click on this meetings tab at the top left. So when you do that, on the old site, it would bring up a list of all of the meetings. And so there are just a few places you have to enter some search terms. So for the meeting type, you can select all, and that's a really easy way to do that. And then you can narrow down to a specific date range, or if there's an item or a specific meeting date, you can use the search text to do that. One thing
do you do topics in that?
Yeah, in the search text, you can do kind of any kind of content that would be on the meeting agenda for meeting.
So if we wanted to study something like the mix, we just can type in the mix and all those things.
If it was titled that on an agenda, so if there's a nickname for something, you might want to look up what the agenda. You could use that, but if it's not part of the agenda item title, it may not necessarily show in the results. One thing of note here, if you do last year, it'll do the last calendar year. So I had tried this, and it'll pull up all the meetings from 2017, which is a little less helpful. You can do this year, and it will pull up all of the meetings from the current calendar year. And again, you can see these are meetings that have been created in OnBase by council staff based on the calendar set by the council. Once the council calendar is approved for 2019, we'll update and create those meetings, and they'll show up here. And then you can see, here's our data from our meeting today.
Was there a question about the agenda packet?
Mm-hmm.
So is that not the same thing as document, where the documents link will add, you get added material? Okay.
So one of the key differences here, this is the cutoff when we moved to OnBase. So the last meeting that we used Sire for was on October 25th, and then all of the meetings preceding that. So one thing I just wanted to draw your attention to, with the old Sire Public Access site, you could go to an agenda and view an HTML version of that agenda, which would allow you to click on each item title, and it would bring up supporting documents for that item. For the meetings which occurred after the beginning of November, that is still the case. So you can go to the agenda view and click on each item title, and it will bring up supporting documents. We were having some issues with that over the weekend, but I believe we've resolved those, and we'll be just looking into that a little more, so that as we're continuing to publish meetings, that's working as expected.
Elizabeth, I'm trying this on my computer, and I'm still not being able to get the agendas.
So I believe it's some issue. So it's working externally, like we've done testing, but it's something with the Provo Guest Network, and we had submitted. You had let me know at the beginning of this meeting that was happening, and so we've submitted a ticket to our IS department, but
So it's not just my computer?
It's not mine's not either. It's the guest network. So if you're connected to the internal network, like I'm on the internal network right here, and it's working. So it's something with that internet network, and so we'll have to work with our IS team to get to the bottom of what's happening there.
And we can still do this from home? We'll just click the agendas. Can we do that now from home, or is it?
You can. So agendas.provo.org, and I believe several council members were able to successfully use that over the weekend to review materials for this meeting. Yeah, so it's some issue with the internal Provo Guest network that we're looking into. For the meetings that are happening in OnBase, as I mentioned, you'll be able to click on the agenda item title and view the related documents. So with the historic meeting data, that is not the case. The process used to transfer over all of our historic meetings back to 2013, they just had to roll all the documents up into one PDF. So you can still utilize that much like you would have before, but when you click on the agenda, you'll see there's no hyperlinks. Like when you click on these, it doesn't bring up any of the documents. But you can still view the agenda packet, and you can do a Control F if you knew some terms that were in the document, or maybe what the title was. You could still search and skip ahead to those sections. So all of the content is there, but for the historic data, it's presented in a little bit simplified format, and that was really to avoid incurring some exorbitant costs with having that sophistication and how all of those historic meetings were moved over. So ultimately, all of those meetings will be available back to 2015 on the new site, and that was important to us in maintaining some of the transparency and availability of materials. But just something to note as you're using new and upcoming meetings versus meetings that happened before October.
And I think we talked about this also, about the app on the iPads.
Yes, so I am going to talk about that right now. Go back to my PowerPoint. Okay, so as far as mobile access, with the current version of OnBase Agenda that the council is using, there is an iPad-only app. And if you're interested in using that, if you have an iPad, it doesn't work on an iPhone, unfortunately, but if you have an iPad, I would be happy to help you set that up. We're still waiting on confirmation from our vendor that they've installed the broker to be able to use that app, but we're expecting that by the end of the week, so I'm happy to help anyone with that. When we upgrade to a future version of OnBase, there will be more mobile access for other operating systems, for Android and other devices. As far as mobile access in the meantime, while we're on the current version of OnBase that we have, I've included some links here. It's pretty easy to create a shortcut on your device to open right to that website. So it doesn't offer some of the same features and sophistication of an app, but it's a good workaround in the meantime. So we'll be sharing this PowerPoint, and you can use these instructions to do that, or I'm happy to assist with that. Okay, so that's kind of all we really wanted to go over as far as public access. Do you have any questions, Dave?
If we send a link to a document in this new system, is it persistent?
That's the understanding that we've been given by our software representatives, and so because we've been working out some of the other issues right now, I haven't experimented with that in particular too much, but that's what we've been instructed as far as how it will work. And so if we see that that is not the case for whatever reason, we would love to dig into that and figure out maybe there's a particular process for keeping those links static and how we're uploading the documents and how we're pushing those through. So, Dave?
I just want to say this I'm so excited for this. I think this is such a critical component in interfacing with the public and allowing those that are interested and want to follow, lowering the barrier to entry, making it as easy as possible so that when they go in, maybe they care about one issue, but then they come in and they look at the agenda like, oh, well, that sounds interesting. And then they can click over, here's the documents. And the easier we can make that, and the easier we can make it people who miss a meeting. I mean, there were times where I would miss a meeting and then I was just waiting for weeks for the minutes to come out just to know what happened, and I couldn't get. And so I think we're far ahead of where we've been. I think this is a great step forward. After working with it for a couple of weeks, I think I want to sit down with you and just one thing that I noticed. If we can go back to the website. If we go to like the 7th item in this meeting, so number 7 is a good example.
Sorry. Oh, sorry, this mouse is very touchy.
Exactly, right there. So here's an example of something that has 4 supporting documents. First one is the Planning Commission report. The next one, I don't know what they are, but that's kind of the point. Is you have 4 really long links that are redundant of what is there and doesn't actually describe what they are. And so that sometimes the information overload can be dissuading to people that are just trying to like, hey, does this? It's often the way we have to title these. They're sometimes cryptic. And so then
right, and to some extent, this is program. This is these are automatic. So supporting document. There are some certain things on the back end where, in order to connect a document to a specific agenda item, the system generates the titles that are shown right here. So we've named the documents differently when we've uploaded them in the software. So that's something Amanda and I can look into. I'm not sure how much control we have over how it appears right here and what the title is.
Fair enough.
We're happy to look into it, and that's great feedback.
Yeah, that's great. If you mouse over it, it'll pull up that little thing, and it's exactly the same. So
yeah,
just little user.
And
things.
You can see down here if sorry, it keeps sliding because it's on an angle. If you look at the URL here, you can see the title of the document there. So obviously that's not a great. It doesn't solve the issue that you brought up, but I'm not sure how much control we have over this. So in the meantime, while we ask those questions, you can still see the title that was given to the document in the system.
And if you see things like this, raise them for us, because we're catching. These two have really caught a lot of things and fixed them, and I think that will continue. But this is not dissimilar to what was in the old system as well. And I would like to see OnBase fix that, but what we've got now is far superior still to what we had a month ago.
I redact my previous comment because it's just pulling the same title. So we'll look into that and see what if anything we can do, and that's great feedback for us to pass on to them as they're making improvements in the future.
Great, thank you.
So depending on how many supporting documents you have, let's say there's 7, and you want to go down and review them all. If you click on one, if it changed color, like, yes, you've already read this one, or if they were numbered like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then that way you could go and say, it does?
It just changed.
Super.
So it opened in a new window, and...
But does it stay that color saying that
I think it may be the most recent one that you viewed. So if you're going sequentially, hopefully you can kind of just use that as your bookmark, and then you know this is that's the last one you used, so this is the next one that you'll want to read.
Right.
And again, with the app and feature functionality with that, I think it's a little bit easier, and a little more user friendly as you're methodically reviewing each document. But to some extent, it's how the website is programmed, and we don't have as much control over that. But it looks like it does at least reflect the most recent thing that you've accessed. Okay, well, I would just like to reiterate, Amanda and I are are the experts here at the city as far as OnBase, and we're really familiar with the system. Happy to be a resource to any of you as you're getting to use that, and we'll be working to create some more materials that'll go out to the public and that council members can utilize as you interact with your constituents and connect them with resources. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, both of you, and all the work that this has been a big undertaking. Thank you. We'll then move to item number 4, a discussion on proposal related to neighbor housing services in Provo and homes purchased with CDBG/Home Dollars. Charlene Wild and Dave Walters are going to present. Where's Dave go? There he is. Thank you.
You.
Members of the council, mayor, good afternoon. One of the very important functions that the redevelopment agency has is that we administer the community development block grant and the home partnership funding that we receive from the federal government on behalf of the city. And it's a big responsibility. We have quite a number of partners that help us do this. NeighborWorks at Provo has been one of those important partners to help us accomplish the goals that we established for ourselves. I know many of you have been intimately involved with NeighborWorks over the years and volunteered your time and services to help NeighborWorks achieve their mission. NeighborWorks has worked closely with Provo in the past on a variety of issues, some of which has been acquiring property where perhaps the property owner wouldn't sell to the city directly. NeighborWorks has volunteered to step in and act as an acquisition agent. They've helped assemble the property. They've helped develop property. They've helped put deals together that would increase household or home ownership opportunities for residents in Provo. Over the years, we've done a variety of projects utilizing some of this funding. These projects that we're talking about today actually go back as far as 2003. And so as we worked with NeighborWorks to acquire this, we ran into the housing crash that occurred in 2008 and 2009. And some of these projects were no longer feasible to be sold. We put in more money than we could reasonably expect to get out. And so some of our agreements that we had with NeighborWorks, we've modified to allow them to rent the properties out until such time as the market's changed. So in the course of examining our books, NeighborWorks has gone through their records. They've identified some issues that they've brought forward. They've sold some of the homes. We're talking about moving forward now and cleaning these up, getting them ready, and moving forward in our partnership as we go ahead. So, excuse me, the Franklin Commons project, this was 9 single-family homes and 8 twin homes. They were all sold in 2006. Some of this information, we would expect that these homes would be not necessarily repaid to the city, but they've all been sold, and NeighborWorks has reprogrammed that funding into their projects and moving forward. And so they're asking that their obligations under this particular contract to be met, and we would agree with that. In the next project, which is they could call the Place on 9th. This is in the Dixon neighborhood. It's 255 and 275 north on 900 west. They were going to, they purchased the parcels and they were going to construct 5 homes and rehab an existing home. Some of the neighborhood, when they were meeting with the neighborhood groups to move this forward, some of them felt that this proposal was a little too dense, asked NeighborWorks to remove one of the units from the project. NeighborWorks agreed and created larger lots that had some more green space. And so they did it and started in 2007. In 2008, the economy crashed, and they had to hold on to the remaining 2 units that they had in the project. Excuse me. They have sold the last home in 2011, but they took a big loss on these projects because of the volatility in the housing market. They submitted their final new sources and use report to us, and through miscommunication, we didn't completely close it out, and so we have a little bit of an affordability gap issue. Let me back up a little bit. On certain of the projects, depending on the amount of money that we put in from the federal government, there's a affordability period that we're required to maintain on the homes. So the main issue is that are we making sure that we keep these homes in the affordability pipeline for different homeownership. So they are asking that we amend these contracts to reflect that they will pay us $74,000, almost $75,000 back to the city, and then the remaining units be granted, it would be $186,000 that they would ask to be granted back to them. And this would clear off that project. We would also amend the contracts to indicate that the affordability requirements mandated by HUD would be maintained for below area median income for the 15-year period. NeighborWorks will pay us $3,000 per unit for the remaining years of the affordability unit until title is transferred. The next project is the Joaquin Retreat. This is at 657 East and 350 North. This is again another project where they were assembling property in order to make some projects happen. They had several meetings with the neighbors to try to design a project that would benefit the targeted population as well as make enhancements to the neighborhood. And they were working through this, through the crash as well. They held on to the properties until later on. And then HUD determined that any of the homes not sold should be rented. They also indicated that there was a home that needed to be rebuilt, that was torn down and needed to be rebuilt and sold or rented. They built the home, sold it. It sold to a moderate income family, but there were no deed restrictions that were enforceable on the property, and so that's why it transferred from 80% area median income to a moderate family income. So they submitted that to us. They are asking, I lost my place here. I'm sorry?
44?
Yeah, so the $44,000 to be 160. So it was 213,000. They got, they have cash proceeds of 44, almost 45,000. So that they are requesting that they will amend the contract to indicate that they're going to pay this 44,000 to us, and that the remaining balance would be a grant. If there were any excess funds that were from the sale of the remaining lots, they would be forwarded to the redevelopment agency as a reduction on the grant amount. They have started selling the homes that they have previously been renting as a result of the increase in the economic outlook, and in expectations of what we had initially put together. And so they are asking now that they're asking for grants on some of the contracts, but they are paying for more than they had previously anticipated. So we think that staff has looked at the presentation. We believe that it is reasonable to go ahead and amend these contracts in order to move forward and put our house in order not only with NeighborWorks but with HUD, and to clearly identify whose responsibility the housing affordability is. But we believe that NeighborWorks has been an important partner throughout the years for Provo and will continue to be as we move forward to make housing affordability a reality in the community. Yes, sir.
So when we started this process of buying and rehabbing the homes back in 2007 and previous, typically each home cost more to rehab, and so there was money left on the table. We called it an investment into the neighborhood. However, because of the economy coming back as strong as it has, some of these homes that we expected to leave money on the table were actually making some money, I believe. So we're coming ahead in that regard.
So I will let Charlene answer that. But yes, so they the economy has rebounded, so we have been able to meet, in some instances, we've been able to meet what was put into it, and NeighborWorks is willing to go through and do the analysis and sell that, and that is part of the money that they are transferring now back to the city. So
I'm just looking at this paragraph here, like 51,380.
Right.
And then another 59,000. So in some cases, on some contracts, they're paying more than
what they put into it.
Yeah. So luckily, it's come about where the economy has picked up enough to make it better than we originally envisioned.
Right. Yes.
I'm very interested in this. I appreciate. I think I followed your presentation the whole time. I mean, I understand that we're trying to get the books in order. There's things that are long due, and let's just get them resolved and all that. But
right.
I think this is an important discussion, even for going forward. Mr. Kinnick just talked about
the economy, how it was down and now it's up, but even before all of that, I believe there was a house in the neighborhood. It was before I moved in there, but it was shortly before. And because of some, I believe it was like meth was being cooked there. It was just a constant. The police were constantly being called to respond to this house. It was there. It was a blight to the neighborhood. It was bad all around. But because of the cost to rehabilitate it, it was just going to sit there because it would cost far more to rehabilitate than you could turn around and sell it for. So it was just stuck, and it was going to be this drag on the neighborhood for a very long time. And I believe NeighborWorks, Neighborhood Housing Services, was asked to take it on, rehabilitate it, and sell it. And I believe the expectation was it was always going to be at a loss.
Right.
But the cost to the city was a lot less to invest the money then and stop the calls and stop the problems and go in the future. So I guess it sounds like some of this. It's almost like the expectation was it would have to come out exactly, and there was not going to be any investment in the city. And I'm wondering, is that the expectation? Is that the expectation going forward? Or are we going to look at these as investments that may not pay for itself on this project?
So I think it's, so in a lot of instances, I don't think it's necessarily that we're getting a financial recoupment of all of our funding. I know in the past NeighborWorks has gone in and picked up homes that were illegally converted into multifamily units and people living in, pretty bad conditions, basements that had not been adequately converted, didn't have adequate ventilation, didn't have adequate venting of gases and other issues that could be a long-term hazard for people. And NeighborWorks has gone in and put more money in than you could reasonably expect to get back. As if you were an investor, if you and I were an investor and we were just buying homes and flipping them, we probably wouldn't touch some of these because in many cases it'd be cheaper to tear it down and build new. But NeighborWorks made the investment to go in and kind of keep the integrity of the neighborhood. And so our expectation is that we were not going to get a full recoupment of costs in all these cases, but we are providing a value to the neighborhood and to the community by bringing these homes that were deteriorated, in some cases former drug homes, back to a more profitable and more, I don't want to say profitable, but more agreeable disposition.
And Dave, to me, that's a critical point, is because a lot of the times we get our developers that come in and say, I have to make the profit, I have to make the money on this. These are not, we have to determine as a council, if we're giving them money, is this an investment or is it, what are we looking at it as? And I, in the past, I know that there have been times that we've looked at it as an investment they would take that money and be able to move on to the next project.
And in some cases, that's what NeighborWorks is going to be able to do. Is they're going to take some of this funding, some of the money that they're asking to be granted into, they'll be able to rotate that into other projects within the community. And so what we're kind of doing here as a joint partnership is we're investing in the quality of life in the community. So we're increasing the neighborhood by taking some of these problem homes off the market and putting them back in and making an opportunity for an affordable housing for maybe a family that wouldn't necessarily qualify under other programs now to be able to step into these
And
homes.
have we always done this through CDBG?
We've done it through CDBG, and there are opportunities for us to do it through, as part of the redevelopment process.
Just make sure I understood what you said, so, because this was very helpful, your response was very helpful, and I just want to make sure I understood correctly. So, all along, even back when we first engaged in these projects that we're trying to reconcile now, there was never an expectation that they would pay it all back. The expectation was that at some later date, we would forgive some of it. So this was part of the expectation the whole time, or?
So, I'm going to hesitate, because during this transition period, the housing collapse happened, right? And so that kind of reset expectations for a lot of projects. And part of this was that we, in talking to HUD and talking with NeighborWorks, came to the determination that it was going to be advantageous to have some of these sit as rentals for a while instead of selling the money and then rotating it back into projects.
We had to make ordinance changes for that, didn't we? I remember back in that day, we had to make some changes to ordinance which allowed them to rent.
I don't know if it was changes to the ordinance or changes to the contracts that we had at the time.
I don't remember.
I want to say contracts. It could very well have been an ordinance, but I don't know. That was a little bit before my time. And I know that it was some of the contracts and some of the obligations and talking to HUD that we went through this process and changed it so that to allow them to rent that.
So when I was on the council before and we would do these projects, the way I remember it is we, working with maybe the CNRCC committee, the neighborhood, we would hear that there was a problem house and it would be bought, and there would be a pro forma of what was expected, how much money it would take to fix it up, and the understanding there was a certain amount, I can't remember if it was 15,000 or 30,000. There was a limit on how much that we would invest into the neighborhood between the sale price and what it would actually take to fix the place up. And if it was more than the 30,000, then we would have to come back to the council and get it approved, but there was that expectation. So the ones right now that are actually selling and need no subsidy or are selling at such a high price that the city's getting money back, that was never really the plan, and the actual benefit to the community was taking a problem property and making it, instead of a liability, an asset to the neighborhood.
So what we were asking for today is that with your approval, we'll be modifying these contracts and bringing them back to you for approval at a later council meeting by resolution. So that's the direction the council. Ms. Wild and some of the representatives from NeighborWorks are here if you have any questions of her.
Just to get this moving, I'll make the motion that we direct redevelopment staff to just draft those documents to modify the contracts as discussed, and bring it back to us in that future direction.
I'll second. Does that address, does this motion address everything you need to accomplish?
I believe so.
Elizabeth, do you have that? Are you good with that motion?
And I would like to have some discussion on that, but I just wanted to give us a direction on the discussion.
Just while Elizabeth's working on that, I just went through the guest, Provo guest. We can now do agendas.provo.org through the guest.
So the password be our guest?
It should.
Okay, would you repeat that back just so?
Yes, so Mr. Hurley moved to direct redevelopment staff to make amendments to the contracts and documents which would implement the changes discussed and to bring these to a future council meeting.
Discussion, you said you had some discussion.
Yeah, just you know, I don't know all the ins and outs, but just my preference going forward, and it sounds like we're clearing stuff up from the past, but going forward, I'd almost like to see that kind of pro forma written in, that this is the in the contract, this is the expectation, this is what we think is going to come out. You know, that this is sales price versus for the investment. And so we can kind of have that, you know, on this one we expect to invest $15,000. On this one we expect 10. This one we think it's going to be 20. Whatever it is. And then, so it doesn't necessarily have to come back to the council in the future, as long as they're within, you know, that range.
Are you looking for us to create like a guideline that we would fall, if we fall within these guidelines, we wouldn't necessarily bring everyone back, but if it were outside, I think Mr. Connect referred to something similar that had been done in the past.
Because when I see this, I could get the feeling like, ooh, we really underperformed. We had some problems in the past, and now the city has to write it off. And and I didn't realize, reading all that I read, I didn't realize that, oh, well, this is. It sounds like to me that this was kind of expected all along. There was not an expectation that they were going to pay it all back. And so if there was a way to have that written in,
and that's what I would. If I remember right, there was an expectation that some of that, I don't know how much was going to be paid back. And I agree with Dave. If we had something that we knew what we were actually expecting,
yes,
this to how it would perform, what we expected from it back. But you know, I went back 7, 8 years and said, you know, we're going to give this away. I know there would be, we're going to forgive this. I know we would hear that there would be problems with that with certain people because the expectation was not understood at the beginning.
Well, then let us clearly quantify that in the agreement as we bring it forward, and then we can come back at probably another work session with you and talk about that.
Say something?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'd like to, but I'm not going to. So let us do that as we're amending these contracts. We can put together some sort of term sheet or explanation sheet that would kind of lay that out.
I just think that would be helpful as we go forward. That way we'll always know, yeah, this is, we are working as partners and we don't expect it all back.
So we anticipate that NeighborWorks is going to be, continue to be a value partner as we go through this process. I know that some of the things that they have in mind, they're looking to do a pocket neighborhood where, you know, when the city approached the neighborhood about that possibility of doing a pocket neighborhood, it wasn't really well received by the rest of the neighborhood, and that might be simply because it was the city proposing it. So
in the location.
In the location. But there are certain people that are, you know, if it's the city project, then it's automatically a non-starter, unfortunately.
And that being said, I do want to make sure that you know how much you do appreciate the partnership that we do have. We just need to make sure that we're working together on this and that we understand what direction we're all going together.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
First off, thank you very much for considering this. The contracts, in the beginning, it was our intention to try to pay it all back. But circumstances happened that neither the city nor NeighborWorks had any control over. And instead of, the former RDA director had told me, instead of bringing it back for this reason and then bringing it back again and bringing it back again, let's finish the project with one contract adjustment. And so, you know, it was that. Well, one thing that I do want to say is that over the past 6 months, the communication between the RDA and our organization has improved 1,000%. Mr. Walter has been in my office 4 times in the last 6 months, which is more than I can say in the last 9 years, not with him, but it just has really improved. And Mr. Walter, I do want you to know how much we really appreciate that constant communication and that they're trying to help us accomplish the mission that maybe you guys are looking for. So I do want to tell you how things are improving, and I do appreciate it.
Okay. We have a motion on the table and a second. And just one other item of discussion. This is a policy issue that we're dealing with. This is a motion that will appear on in 2 weeks. Is that right? Or we have?
We'll try. And we're working on the contracts. I'll let Mr. Mumford and Mr. Strachan know.
Set a date specific then at this point, right, David?
I said future date.
Okay, future date, okay. Very good. And that'll give us, if there's any questions, we'll have the opportunity to approach with those new contracts. Those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 5. Oh, we get to take a break first. Let's take a 5-minute break. Well, we can do it all, can't we? That. Yeah. Let's go for a 10-minute break if we'd like to, and we'll come back and go item number 5 after that.
questions. He said it's good, he's excited.
We'll now move on to item number 5, an update on the ITOD, Interim Transportation-Oriented Development Zone, as it relates to the mix. And we will turn the time over to Dixon Holmes.
So actually, we're going to have the resident expert on the ITOD zone, Phil Pepperoni, give an update on the ITOD zone, but it is relative to the mix. And when Bill is done and any questions that you have about the ITOD, then we'll talk specifically about the mix a little bit and some things that they're working on or hoping to accomplish. And some of this is a result of meetings that we've had with the mix or with the representatives of the mix. And I know in our community that may be one of the more frequent questions that you get, and certainly on social media, what's happening with the mix, what's going on there. And they are at a pivotal point right now, and that's why this conversation is important, because there are some things that they would like to pursue that would more than likely require council decisions on either zone changes or text amendments to keep the project moving forward. But anyway, Ms. Pepperoni will give an overview of the mix, or the ITOD zone.
Right, do you have the slides? So we've had 3 housing developments get built in the ITOD zone since it was adopted and placed on the map back in about 2009. So one really pivotal question for the City Council is, what do you think of these projects? Are they delivering what you would hope we would get? What should be changed or could be changed if they're not delivering what they are intended to? As from the staff perspective, we're satisfied with the projects that have been built. This is Startup Crossing right on the intersection of
Carson Corner
on Freedom Boulevard and 5th South?
Yeah, 5th.
So we got commercial space in that corner here, which has a taco shop in it, and all the rest is residential. They're actually stacked condos. That's not a townhouse unit. They're stacked condos, but they were designed like this because we wanted to get the brownstone walk-up kind of appearance or look.
Condos, are they for sale?
No, I'm sorry. Okay, wait a minute. I don't remember if they've sold individually or not.
I think they have.
I think they have. They are individual stuff. Okay. I thought
Can we? Of course, then there's Startup Crossing on Freedom and 6th. So in terms of building form, massing, scale, building materials, of the 3 TOD projects, the only one where we have gotten any negative feedback was the parking situation on this one, and you're well aware of that. We amended the code so that that couldn't be done again, replicated. They took the full 50% break off the parking ratio that was allowed at that time. 2 interesting things have happened since we amended that parking ratio. One is that people are either staying at 75%, which is, before under this, you could get a 50% break. Now, under the new rules, you can qualify for a 25% break, and then you can go even further beyond that if you do certain things. You can never go less than 1-to-1, 1 space per unit, no matter what. This one went well less than 1-to-1, and that's what caused the problems. 100 dwelling units, 75 spaces. The interesting thing we're finding since we amended that code is that people are either staying at that 75%, they're taking a 25% break and staying there, or in a few cases they've asked to go a few spaces below that, over the entire building, a few spaces below, but they've offered quite a bit in the way of amenities. So much so to the point where Aaron Scavlin with the Bicycle Committee has come to the staff and said, what have you guys done that all of a sudden the developers are doing a lot better job in providing bicycle amenities? Repair stations for bicycles within the building, better secured parking for the bicycles, things like that. And the answer is simply that we held out this carrot that said, you know, if you want to add parking break, you have to give us some things back. And the parking amenities is one of the better things that they've been giving us. Next slide. Of course, then you all know NeighborWorks project. A little bit further south on 6th South comes into the back of the project. This must be 4th or 5th.
5th South.
5th South here. There are single-family homes across the street, which is why townhomes were put on this side of the block. The ITOD zone does have transitional regulations. If you're against residential, you have to do certain things or can't do certain things. But in the back, next slide, they're able to go to a higher density and higher building because this is ITOD zoning across the street here. And we've had no complaints about any aspect of this project at all, parking or otherwise. So as you look at those projects, ask yourself, is there anything you would like us to do differently?
What's the parking ratio on this one, do you know? It was more than required, I think.
Again, when this one went through, they probably could have qualified for the 50% break, but they didn't take all of that. I don't think they went below 1-to-1. But they do seem to have more spaces than they need on this project. They do seem to be overparked. Not by much, but more than they need. Now, in spite of that, they've got on-site spaces, but you'll see people parking along the street. Again, we keep finding this. When you orient the building to the street and you put doors on the street, that parking is just more convenient. So even though there's adequate on-site parking, a certain number of tenants will choose to park here just because it's more convenient to their unit. Some general requirements of the zone are that you cannot, you have to have at least 20,000 square feet to do any type of attached product. We did that on purpose to make people mass properties so they wouldn't tear down one little house and try to do something just on that one little lot. The building height is 100 feet unless you're in a transitional area. A transitional area means if you're within 100 feet of R1, RC, or Pro zone, your building height is 3 stories or 50 feet. The townhouses like this tend to fall within that single-family residential of about 35 feet from the point of the roof. Parking ratio's been adjusted. We've talked about that. Other requirements of the zone are similar to the downtown zones, where you have minimal habitable floor space along the street edge. So if you're on a primary street, at least 40 feet back has got to be occupiable space. If you're on a secondary street, at least 30 feet back has got to be occupiable space. In case you want to check the ordinance itself, the TOD zone is 1423. So that within 1423 there are some architectural requirements, but there are much more detailed architectural requirements in 1434-295, the design standards for the downtown and ITOD zones. So in the design standards, we've not only given the language of what we're trying to get after, but we've also put in photographs of what you can do and what you cannot do. So things like minimum building entrances along the street. We don't want long blank walls. We want to have access points, not only windows, but access points to the buildings to engage the building to the street and encourage walkability, to make people who are walking there feel safe. Things like building materials, you can't use vinyl, you can't use aluminum. Building massing and scale are all addressed in the design guidelines.
Mr. Pepperone?
Yes.
Before you get too far, you kind of threw out a question right as you were transitioning, and I should have jumped a little sooner, I apologize. But you showed us those 3 examples, and I really think that context and placement really matters. But of the 3 that you showed, by far my favorite is Carson Corner. I love that development. Just an anecdote, before I joined the council, I was a neighborhood chair, and we knew some of these things were coming. We were getting some of these issues coming to Dixon neighborhood, and we needed to make some decisions. Do we want to just fight for single-family residential, or are there places where we would be open to some development or whatever? And so we did some walking tours of other places in Provo, and we hit like a place
in Dixon on our way out, and we said, what about this place? It's on State Street or whatever. And there was a lot of mixed feelings. I'm like, well, we could do commercial. We really wouldn't want, multiple unit, multiple family or whatever. But by the time we got over to Carson Corner, we stopped and looked at this and said, what do people feel about this? And all of a sudden it was like, wow, this is great. And we said, okay, well, think back to that corner we were on. Is this something that we would accept there? And everyone was like looking at each other and kind of shaking their head. Yeah, it's only a little bit of commercial. We added an amenity, but the residential that was there, everyone liked. And so I love that we're moving a little bit more towards this form-based, good architecture and whatnot. But so just of those three, and I think other, these are appropriate for where they're located. But Carson Corner is something that I would like to see, in my own neighborhood in certain spots. And I really, of the designs, that's my favorite.
So in thinking about that project again, I'm pretty confident it was condominiumized because that was developed by Mike Miller. It's actually a former fireman. He was a very creative developer, and I'm pretty sure everything he builds to sell. So because we had just a creative developer and somebody who was willing to take some input from staff, and it was very cooperative, I think we came up with something that, was a better mousetrap.
Seems like you're using that as housing for the students of Dead Mountain. One of the startups where they learn programming and they just stay kind of there in the neighborhood. But I don't know that, I've never heard anything negative about it. It seems like it's a positive for what's happening there.
Yeah, there are corners of Joaquin, down in, not Joaquin, but Franklin, on 3rd South, where that exact building, that type of form would be really appropriate also.
And then let me just throw this up before we move on. I'm trying not to take too much time. You talked about massing. It's required to hit the 20,000 before you can start doing some of these additional things. And I do worry a little bit about that. I'm learning on the job. I'm trying to gain as much as I can. But when I look at some national best practices that are being taught in conventions and things and all of that, one thing that's being pushed is kind of the smaller granularity. And you talk about number of openings and whatnot, and I think that can kind of give you a feel of finer granularity, almost kind of a faux granularity and some of that. But I do wonder if we need to take a look and make sure that we're not pushing people to coarser granularity when some of the finer granularity might be helpful, and maybe we could address some of the concerns of tearing down one house and putting up something that doesn't belong. Maybe we could address that in another way rather than pushing people to.
Tell me about granularity.
Bryce, would you back up to the Carson Corner slide? Go ahead.
You lost me. Sorry.
Dave, are you going to answer that question?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were going to.
Well, to the east of that corner, the right corner, there's a driveway, and then there's another house.
Well, and that house has now been turned into a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Right here, right on the other side of that driveway, right.
But that house is on one lot, and my guess of still can't see it, it's down to the right.
Yeah, it's just down here.
That one lot is probably, I don't know, 10,000 feet at the most, square feet, so they couldn't develop it. They'd have to combine it with something else, and I think you're talking about, what if they came in and took that out but put in something similar to this?
So you're right, something that belonged, yeah. Could I just promise that I'll send an article that talks about granularity in the future? In a nutshell, the urban fabric, there's an argument that does better when you have smaller. Think of Center Street. How on Center Street you have all of these individual businesses pressed up against each other, but they're individual buildings. And if
if one goes out of business, it's a small hole that can then be filled by something else, versus versus a large development where it's one department store, and when that department store goes out of business or whatever, now it's a huge hole. It allows for more smaller incremental development rather than
makes it more resilient.
Makes it more resilient. And there's several, but I'll send an article.
In this context, it can mean a more fine-grained mix of housing type or uses. So one thing that staff has been talking to more and more developers about, having a hard time getting anyone to buy it, is to do a product like this that's more of a brownstone look along the street edge. And then behind that and above it, go ahead and put the stacked units. Go ahead and put the apartment units or condo units that are very different product type. But on the street edge, put something that interfaces really well with the street. I mean, those two types being all in one building and all in one parcel, it's a very fine-grained mix of housing product. HEG will be coming in with a townhome development to the east of Smith's, but it will just be 22 to 24 townhome units on a fairly small property. It's going to be nice to have that product in that area. It's going to be a different product, but that'll be the only product on the site. But to get that product into the larger context of the neighborhood, it's addressing that finer granularity that Dave's talking about.
Is that the old laser tag pipe?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think there's something to be said for having a minimum like 20,000. To me, it encourages properties that on their own might sit there with the individual owners not motivated or thinking they're sitting on a gold mine or whatever. And the IFA block, for example, you have I don't know if there's 5 property owners, and now we have someone interested in doing the whole block and doing it in a way that is far better than any one of them would have done by themselves. So I'm partial to requiring people to amass a certain amount. It's not going to solve everything, and it's not going to have every property sucked into a larger, better project. You will still have some individual pieces left out there, which, I don't know, in 10, 20 years you go, oh, well, we ended up with this, this, and this. Then I would say work with them, but right now I think there's something to be gained by your current policy of encouraging people to amass properties and do, if not a whole block at a time, do something more than individual pieces.
Yeah, to me, you don't have to drive very far through Joaquin to see the old apartment buildings that were built in the 80s or maybe 90s, where they knocked down one house and they built what looks to me like a shoebox. It's this long, narrow apartment house that's just on one lot, and the whole lot is building or parking. And to me, that's what we're trying to avoid. We have enough of those around the city already. Can we go to startup processing? I think this just needs a new battery. Thanks. Given the price of land, construction costs, a lot of those types of things, I would imagine that this is probably pretty representative of what we'll see more of in the ITOD zone. You know, higher density than than Carson's Corner. So we'd love to hear your feedback on this building and NeighborWorks as to anything that you would think should be done differently. Or now this does, again, it puts doors on the street, but those are doors that go to the living area. That entrance to the building comes up an interior doorway. There is a door on the street that goes into the building over here. And these are functional as doors, but that's kind of a back door. But this meets the code.
Your mention, the mention you made earlier about the bike parking ratio and then bike amenities, is there any evidence that that's actually incentivizing or that people don't bring cars, or is it just supplying a need in the market for for people who would prefer that kind of arrangement, or is it actually creating a problem?
There's no
just not
evidence
enough parking.
to any of those yet, because the first of those buildings hasn't been finished and occupied yet.
I see, okay.
So they've either gone through the process and they're under construction right now, or they're just still getting their plans approved.
And it does seem the location here, and especially it seems like that's the whole idea, right, of transportation-oriented development, is that you're building near the front runner, and you're right downtown, and it's quite possible that someone who has a job up in Lehigh hops on the train, they walk to downtown, they get what they need, they don't need or want a car, or maybe they only want one, but they certainly don't need two. So it does seem like I'm hopeful that would actually.
And that's actually how the mix got brought into this discussion. It was actually a planning commissioner who said, gosh, a lot has changed since that SC3 zone got put there back in 88 or 89, somewhere in there. It's actually when I was an intern here at the city. Now you've got a mass transit hub right in front of you. Should you think about it in different contexts and different terms? Anyway, Dave?
Yeah, so I think there's something to be said about how Startup Crossing was envisioned and how it actually played out based on how it was financed with LIHTC, low-income housing tax credits. So instead of this actually being like a single person or a married couple where they're both young professionals making good money and maybe going to that job in Lehigh, this is low income. Someone who's a real professional can't live here because they make too much money. And the young married students who fit the profile of low income generally have two vehicles to get around. School, one works, one goes to school. So it turned out the financing changed how this developed and will always affect who lives here.
There are two projects coming forward geared towards BYU married couples. One's Glenn Rowland's project right off campus by the Life Science Building, 310 units. Another one's on the site of the old UCCU that's now being rebuilt. I'm hoping between those two, they'll free up some spaces in buildings like this farther away from campus for non-BYU married demographic to fill. Because that's not who we were expecting here. That's who came in and that they qualify and that's fine, but that's not who we were expecting here. I'm hoping that's going to take some small degree of the pressure off that need. We'll see.
Bill, as I look at University Place, would that be kind of the massing that we're looking at for ITOD? I think that they fit that ITOD concept with the front runner and the mall there in Orem and doing easy access to the front runner. Is that a type of concept that we can see in other places, for example, at the mix?
Yeah, the mix is probably because of the surrounding uses and how far away single-family residential is. I could see it working there. I think as far as University Place, I think they tend to have parking on that main level and then 4 layers of residential on top of that. So their buildings are a little bit bigger than this. But that model, the University Place model, may be what they anticipate out the mix. They may be what they propose at the mix.
And that fits within the ITOD zone requirements?
Yeah. So remember, the ITOD zone is also very mixed use. You can bring in some commercial uses, but those commercial uses are limited to 2,500 square feet. If you wanted to bring in a larger use, you'd have to amend the zone. The idea for that was that those commercial amenities were meant to service the community, not to be an outside draw outside of the community.
And how did they do that up there at that place? Did they come in with the project and then do the zoning, or do we, if we zone it now, what kind of controls do we have on what can go in there as far as design and review? And
so if we zone it, then it would just go to Design Review Committee and Planning Commission, and we would apply the ordinance sections that we have, the Zone 1423 and the design guidelines 1434-295. These buildings are representative of what those codes are going to yield. That's why I'm asking the council how you feel about these, because Council years ago took a flyer on this. This was zoned for 7 or 8 years before somebody came in and said, okay, let's build it, let's do it. And the council was patient to wait and let something happen. I think that's kind of the question the mix wants to propose to you. Are you comfortable enough to allow them that same kind of flexibility?
And when you pre-zone anything, it's, are you comfortable with the zone? Are you comfortable with what's allowed and what you're likely to get? And I think that's why we're having the presentation, because this is what you get, and the only problem we've had was the parking, and we've addressed that. Although you could say LIHTC was a variable, but I'm not sure that we can legislate that. So it's a pretty good zone, especially I think for the mix.
As we go to the mix, I guess they're not going to put anything in there that is going to be look cheap necessarily. Sometimes I really like the look of some of the, I like the look at the University Place projects. I think they look quite nice. Maybe it's the brick that I enjoy.
That's a high percentage of brick.
It is.
Yeah.
But I think the design is really well, and I'd love to see something like that, but I would not want to necessarily see some of the ones that we have on 9th East, for example, come out there to the mix necessarily.
Well, and we want them to be reasonably affordable too, right? Or at least a mix of affordability.
And I understand that. The ones at the University Place are a lot more expensive maybe than what some of these other places are. I don't know. I'm just looking to have it look nice in an important area of our town.
Yeah, there's no controversy over the 9th East building being ugly. I think
exactly.
I think everyone agrees with that.
You're not in favor of the early stacked storage unit architectural style?
Exactly.
Is that its technical term?
And that's just something that is that fit within the zone, or what kind of requirements do we need to put on so that we don't get that particular look?
Yeah, those are different sets of design guidelines.
15 years in a row. It's already a landmark.
You know, it already is a landmark, right?
We don't need to wait that long.
It's just the wrong kind.
So we've talked about, and we're still talking about, inclusionary zoning, land trust, how to create, incentivize affordable housing in a project. Would it be appropriate to talk about what developers are offering?
Yeah, as they were having, the mix representatives were having this discussion with Dixon and Dave and myself, and asking about the possibility of the ITU zone, even getting it pre-zoned. We asked the question, what are you willing to give up in order to get that, achieve that? What are you willing to profit for that? We discussed this issue of affordable housing, this need to have affordable housing, and they agreed to either put 10% of the residential units aside at 60% AMI, that's very good, 60% AMI is very good, or to give the city cash in lieu of that 10%. There was a land trust, and well, either way the units would go into a land trust, so that's my anticipation. So they were agreeable to that and are willing to have that in a development agreement or whatever it takes to memorialize that. When developers typically talk about affordable units, they usually go at 80% AMI. So it actually gets them at 60% average median income, I think is very good.
That's just really quick, I apologize. That's county area median income, is that correct?
No, it's Provo, right?
That's Provo.
Provo's in the center.
Okay, perfect, thank you. That's helpful.
So do you feel comfortable, I go back to that same question, do you feel comfortable with our zone, with what we've got that we won't get?
Well, there's a different set of design guidelines that went to the project you're talking about and these projects. Those are two different sets of design guidelines in the code.
And that's, okay. Okay.
Bill, the three examples you've given us, and I don't know if I can just quickly scroll through them, Bryce, or
you want?
Just
all of them?
Yeah, and then you just quickly see them. I mean, there's a difference, I think, in quality and looks in all three of these.
Sure.
We're kind of lumping them together and saying this is an example of what we can get. And my feeling is I'd lots rather have Carson's Corner than this.
Right.
And so I don't know how, as we talk about this and we're using these three examples as acceptable,
how do we distinguish a little bit even finer than that? You know?
So these are all within that range of that ITOD zone. So if that wide of range isn't acceptable, then we either need to talk about what specifically we should amend or tweak or limit, or don't pre-zone it. And those are your choices.
Could you go to the last one for a second? Very last one? Yeah, my visual aesthetics tell me that's the least appealing of the three.
Well, now remember again who the demographic is, and
yeah, and that's more units, right? I mean, this is 59 units, and this is the only one that has a mix of 1 bedroom, and there's only a couple. Then the rest are 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units, whereas Starter Crossing is just I think 1 or 2 2-bedroom, and the rest are 1 bedroom, or not even 1 bedroom. Maybe they're studios.
I think Starter Crossing has 1 2-bedroom, which is the manager's unit. The rest are 1-bedroom units. We tend to get a predominance of 1-bedroom units in downtown and TOD projects. The 4-bedroom units are the townhouses out front. But this, 100% of this was built to be affordable, where in Startup Crossing it's 80-20. There's 20% in there that's at market rate.
So with the rate that you were just describing, the 60%, then you would presumably be able to build something that's
No, since only 10% would be at the 60% AMI. That's just a small percentage of your market
you
rate.
Be able to build something
yes.
nicer.
Yeah.
But the ordinance does allow them to come in and build that. So if there's a zone that's pre-zoned, ITOD, someone could come in and build that, 4 of those. They could.
But if it's market rate, they have to attract customers. Here,
yeah,
they have a waiting list of 300 low-income people who are just dying to get in.
That's absolutely true. But that is a worst-case scenario.
If you're going to pre-zone something, you've got to keep worst-case scenario in your head if you're going to pre-zone it.
So this is a little bit of a landmine, I feel like, and I appreciate Mr. Van Buren kind of leading this into it a little bit, and others. I have a little bit of a hard time because I have strong opinions about architecture. When I see something I like it. When I see something I don't. But I'm just one person, and I'm not an expert, and so that's why I'm glad we have a design review board. I'm glad we have a community development that can help us, and I'm glad we have a public process that can reach out and work on what does the community want. So it's not just one random person's opinion. But I agree. You know, I mentioned my preference for Carson Corner, and that's because that's architecturally the most interesting to me. But it's a different market, it's a different demographic, a different target market, a different density, a different location, different price point. It's all of those things. And yeah, I mean, we could probably require all sorts of great things, but then we're not going to get the, I'm not going to call it affordable housing, but the housing affordability that we're aiming for. But with all that said, I do think that there's ways to do more affordable housing and higher density and still make it aesthetically pleasing. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. It just takes more creativity and a little more. So just if we're just kind of throwing out our feelings or whatever, you know, if there was a way to, if you talk about different design guidelines, if there was a way to kind of push or through development agreements or whatever we need to do, but kind of get a better, provide flexibility, but just make it more likely that we get something higher density, but more of the feel of Carson Corner and maybe a little bit less like this aesthetically, even if we do get more of that diversity of housing types that we're hoping for in market price points and all of that stuff.
So, I trust the MIGs to put in a good development. Why would they not do the best? Because it's going to be part of a larger development. It's not by itself.
They're likely to sell it off to the different developer, the developers of the MIGs, if I understood.
They're currently looking at bringing in different investment groups to help them with the residential while they would do the commercial portion. And which would indicate if you're selling off a portion, you want to sell to somebody who's going to just damage your very significant commercial investment.
That gives me a lot of, I don't have heartburn because of that. It gives me a lot of confidence that they're going to do a good development because they'd be crazy not to. The market does have some, hopefully, good side to it.
Especially in that location.
I think you need to look at, yes, worst case, and parking was worst case, we addressed that. We've looked at vinyl and I guess aluminum siding, like that's not allowed, but we can't require everyone to do brick. So you have to have this leeway, and even though this one, may not light your fire, that is one that they worked closely with the neighborhood on. Started out at 80 units and with no real transition, and then it's like, okay, let's put some townhomes up and go 3 and then finally 4, and have enough parking. So this one addressed.
The neighborhood was against this from the very beginning.
Yes, they were.
I mean, and that was a hard thing for the neighbors to accept. All the talk that came in that night, council members very much against.
Right. Well, but they, to the developer's credit, which was NeighborWorks, and of course the history on this is this is one of the properties where the city couldn't buy it from the owner and asked NeighborWorks to buy it and redevelop it, and it was specifically targeted to be higher density because of the location in the proximity of the TOD. So I think this has worked out about as well as you can do, other than maybe have it, brick all the way up. But there are financial considerations. Typically, if you want to spend a whole bunch on the outside, you're going to spend less on the inside. There's no free lunch. There's trade-offs.
You have to be careful about comparing projects also, because it's my understanding that in University Place, I think Orem City gave millions of dollars in tax incentives on that project, which allows you to buy down land costs or put more money into building materials, right, when the city participates like that.
And they did that through a special an assessment district, where, how did they do that, get those incentives?
I think at least through sales tax rebates, at least that. I'm not sure what beyond that.
Sales tax based on just their general fund?
So sales tax?
Sales tax increment, essentially, agreement, and property tax increment. This is
on the mall. Then.
Right.
So
on the overall University Place project.
So you're kicking back to them some of their sales tax and property tax.
$500 million investment, I think they got, or the commitment was close to $50 million. There was also $500 million of investment.
Capital investment.
And I knew that the capital investment was huge, and I just didn't know how they balanced that if it was through increment of the whole project, including the mall. I guess that's what it was then.
Actually, your sales tax at the mall probably goes down as the result of the redevelopment of the area. The actual square footage of retail has dropped in the mall compared to where it was before. So my guess is most of these dollars are coming out of property tax increment, not so much
property tax increment. Okay.
Where would you like us to go from here?
Ed.
So if you think about the mix, and Dixon, you may address this better than I could, but I think the intent there is to clearly do less office and more residential. That's the direction they're going. And one of the things we've discussed with them is, how do you think about the zoning here? And should you think about it all as an SC3 and amend the code so that you get more residential in SC3? Or should you think about the commercial as the SC3 and a residential as an ITOD? And that's kind of the area where we've been exploring with the mix, is actually taking some out of the SC3 zone and putting it into an ITOD. So the question was, again, because the ITOD was designed to be a pre-zone it and wait until somebody comes and meets the need, given that you have very heavy design standards in there, is something like that workable for the council in general as a policy question? And it's essentially to pre-zone this area as IT, the residential component is ITOD, to allow them to kind of, again, get started, get it entitled, and then likely they will flip this to a residential developer. They'll still have to abide by the design guidelines and all those standards that are there, but that kind of became the question of how much confidence do we have in the ITOD zone that we would allow some of that property, probably 14 acres or so of the ground. Dixon, you know?
Yeah, so right now it's about a 28-acre site, and that's the whole development, not just what they own, that's pretty much the whole thing. And because right now it's all zoned SC3, and what brought a little bit about this conversation is our office attempted a patch, if you will. The SC3 zone currently allows 20% retail or residential. They wanted, and that's relatively new within the last, what, year to 18 months, I guess. And again, the residential is going to be more over here. They wanted to do more than that. Now they're looking at it, and they would like to do half the project residential with actually, so my understanding, they had about 6 acres and 300 units. They had like 14 acres with 500 units, so the density actually goes down. The number of total units goes up, but it's spread out over a larger area. The other portion of the property would actually, they would, instead of having an SC3, they would go to an SC2. So you'd still have the shopping center district, but it's more of a neighborhood shopping than a regional. And then they would do ITOD on the balance. And that was where the Planning Commission said, you know, we feel like we're torturing the SC3 zone to bring in all this residential, and it seems more appropriate to have an ITOD, especially when you are on the UVX line, which these other 3 projects are close to the UVX line, but they're not actually on the UVX line, where this one, yeah, the station, I guess, is right down here. Yeah, right there.
Is it right on the interstate?
It is on the Parkway, but it's south of 2230, so it's more between where the pizza place,
Pizza Factory.
Pizza Factory. That's, thank you. Right across from the Pizza Factory in the Parkway, in the right of way. So that's
real close, though.
Yes,
it is.
Yeah, it's very close. So that's what they're hoping to do. They would probably not characterize as flipping it. They just bring on an investment group. Right now, and as I mentioned at the beginning, it's pivotal to them, right? It would be hard for them to attract additional investors in this part of the project without having at least an idea of what they can get on the project. Right now, they do have an approved plan in the SC3 zone. And this is it, in fact. It has 3 office buildings, a large parking deck, a larger box of retail, some smaller outbuildings or a village type concept. And the village type concept would stay the same, and the residential would be back across, separating the LDS Motion Picture Studio. So, and again, as we had this conversation, again, and thank you very much, Bill, for doing that on ITOD, is that's really the heart of the question, is how comfortable are you with the ITOD zone?
The SC2 zone comes from SC2 across the street. I'm sorry, George.
No, that's okay.
The SC2 is where the
Parkway Village is SC2.
Maybe this has already been explained and I missed it somewhere, but why is more commercial not the preferred option to solve this problem?
So the retail actually doesn't get smaller; it's the office portion gets small.
Right. So why not just expand the commercial?
Because there's only so much retail. The amount of retail that they have in this does go up by about 30,000 square feet. But as far as the overall area, raw acreage, that goes down. But the actual offering for retail goes up. And to do retail on the entire thing, it risks
not being sustainable. That's why it failed before.
Well, and then initially when the mix approached us about this project, they had substantially more retail in it, but they were not able to find people that were interested in that much retail. So
then they would have a hard time calling it the mix too, right?
True.
So how much office space will be there? Is there?
They had proposed 300,000 square feet of office, and with the new plan, it would really be retail and residential. There wouldn't be any office.
So there'd be no office.
There would be no office. No,
It's still hospitality.
So before I answer your question, just so what they were looking at was at the time, Ancestry.com was still on the market, 150,000 square feet at the Micro Focus Tower, the Sears building. There's still some in Wells. There's still some in Zions, and Peg is bringing on 2 office buildings in downtown. And then anywhere else in the valley, they said, you know, office may not be the right thing for this right now. George, I'm sorry, your question.
My support was basically based on the fact I'd rather have residential than office. It adds rooftops. We have plenty of office space. We don't have enough residential space in the city. So why wouldn't we make the change? I guess maybe just to be sure that the residential is proper. To me, it's a much better plan than office buildings. Given what we have in the city today, we have lots of office space. Here.
I'm in favor of what they're asking for, and I would just point out that if we're so afraid of zoning this ITOD, then we should look in the mirror and say, wow, there's significant portions of ITOD that are still on the books. Do we want to leave them on the books? Because who knows what we're going to get? Well, I'm not that afraid. I don't think we need to downzone at something to gain more control over the ITOD. I think we need to carefully, as we go forward, if there are deficiencies, like we saw with the parking, we address those. And then the zone is better. And so if we pre-zone this, we feel like within the parameters that exist, we can get an acceptable project. I don't see why not we shouldn't go forward.
I'm going to just throw, I agree 100%. There is one black cloud on that I can see is by zoning this to the ITOD, that makes that ground a lot more valuable, and because of the density there.
So they've already paid a grundle of money for this, and it's been sitting vacant for the last.
And are they going to just take the money and run? As would be a concern that I've got, but we still have the ITOD zone that we can put something good in.
I'd love to be able to give you a guarantee as well as any other development that would move forward.
Okay. Tell me about the difference in traffic given office space or residential space. This is, I mean, we've tried to fix this intersection with the BRT, but it's not much different. It's still a traffic problem.
Yeah, certainly you're going to have, probably daytime versus nighttime, weekend stuff. The office is going to tend to be more 9 to 5. Where daytime, I don't anticipate that this will, again, it's like most multiple family high-end residential housing. I don't know, Gary or Bill, if you have a thought?
Transportation and access has really been helped with that light here that goes into the airport. I think this is better than it's ever been as far as access in and out. And I feel like access into this has been one of the things that's kept this always underdeveloped. I mean, for years and years and years, I avoided this intersection just because the traffic situation, but it's better now. Even with BRT still not finished and construction out of the way, it seems to me better now than it was before.
I think the bigger issue from an infrastructure standpoint is really probably going to be sewer. Now with more residential and less office, you're going to be boosting up sewer requirements much more than anything else. Now, and more than change in traffic patterns. With residential traffic patterns, have a good chance of actually being less peak and more diffused throughout the day. But your sewer is going to be a bigger issue.
That's an interesting thought. Do we have the infrastructure, or what's that going to cost the city to put in the proper infrastructure? Is that something that we need to deal with? Is it? They will. They'll come back to us. They may come back and say we want to do a tax increment on the property tax the same way the old one.
Well, Yeah, that's already been
That'll
talked.
happen, regardless.
Yeah, that's already been discussed and yeah.
That's right, okay.
Yeah,
Right,
so that's.
okay. We've already approved.
The city has, I don't know if we've done the development agreement.
We've done this, we've designated the area. George.
I make a motion that we rezone this area from SC3 to SC2 for the residence retail area and to ITOD for the residential area.
George, I think we have to do that in a public hearing. Is that right?
I don't know, you're just, it sounds like you're giving staff direction to maybe move forward on a.
Make that proposal first.
It's going to have to go to.
Thank you.
Yeah, right, but giving us the direction is, I think, what staff was looking for.
And so with that direction, what we would do is go back and open a project file for a rezone of this area. Is that what I'm hearing the council wants us to do? Was that, okay.
Very good.
That's what I thought you were saying, George.
I wish you help, but I used to did that.
Gary, you got a second?
Is that a second?
Yes, I'll second the motion. I'm in favor of moving ahead as well. I have confidence based on the projects that have been done so far, and as Mr. Connect pointed out, we haven't had anyone coming to us asking to change that zone, and there's still undeveloped areas within it, so.
And I also agree with this. This is, if we don't do something like this, I'm concerned that we're going to have the State Tree Forum towers for some time at this point here.
I appreciated the comments earlier, and distilling it down, and I'd like to go forward. The area that gives me the most discomfort, though, is does our ITOD, is that we have sufficient design standards in there? So I would welcome kind of a review, or if we're looking into, anyway, just that's where I have the most discomfort. But overall, I'm supportive of moving forward.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Call for a vote. Those in favor? Okay, that passes unanimously to send it forward. Okay, we just combined two items, I think, into a... Oh, yes, the comprehensive update. That's Dixon again. Thank you, I appreciate that. That's right.
Yeah, we're after that. Dixon spent so much time, it's not even done.
He's just getting started.
We have a PowerPoint that needs to be.
So we were here. Do you have those questions that we were talking about yesterday? There were four things about economic development that we were...
I've shared those with him,
okay.
so.
Okay.
The conversation we had earlier today. Yesterday.
Okay, sure.
Whenever I walked into your office.
Yeah, okay, we'll do it. Okay, so this is our PowerPoint presentation. We had 45 minutes scheduled. The Target BYU Express open this week. Okay, we're done now. You wanted to talk some more about other stuff? Okay. Anyway, I do appreciate Chad and Cameron putting together PowerPoint, and we are prepared to answer questions. So as we go through the PowerPoint presentation, if you do have questions, please ask. And Cliff, if I do not get to the 4 questions, please kick me and we'll make sure we get to those. So. Okay.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
As you're starting off and with your announcement, I guess the question on the council is, but what have you done for us lately?
I know, that was the best thing last year. I'm still working on some stuff, so I got a couple hours left in the day. So, have all of you been to the new Target Express? And by the way, please don't call it a mini Target. It's the Target Express. You want to call it Target Express BYU or whatever, but don't call it a mini Target.
Or baby Target. That's it.
Yeah. So if you haven't been, I would encourage you to go. If they don't have what you're looking for, just order it. It will be either delivered to the store or to your house. That point of sale, super important. So, Cameron.
Thank you. So I apologize. I'm actually fighting a cold right now. So if I start hacking and Dixon, I might have to tag team Dixon into this. So anyway, but a little quicker. So new business. So Provo, over the past 6 to 7 months, we've experienced either a lot of new business coming in, some TIs, some relocation of new businesses. This is our fearless leader right there. Out of ribbon cutting for Rev Road, and so this was a great thing. It's an incubator space. It helps local small businesses and eventually help them to take off and hopefully branch out and stay in Provo. And so that's just a ribbon cutting along with our fearless mayor at the new Cafe Rio. So that's a big addition to the mix, and we're really excited about that. And Cafe Rio so far is experiencing a lot of positive experiences, and they have a drive-through. So a lot of the consumers are really excited for that drive-through. So this is just a heat map of the new businesses that are coming in. These are some tenant improvements or businesses just moving around within Provo City. So it's a lot of development that's happening, as you can see, Mount Vista, Duncan, a lot of it in downtown and in the north part of Provo. So we're really excited about these new improvements. These are just some of the, just a small list of what's been going on. Council, we want to thank you and all that you've done. The IFA stores, without your help, we want to thank you for your support. You helped facilitated a great opportunity for IFA and their move from their smaller store to University Avenue. As a result, they've experienced a lot of growth and have seen record sales. And I think it was Councilman Connect that recently talked about that there's potential for an opportunity of a new development because of the move on that one block of the old IFA. So because of your efforts and your dedication to Provo, we're seeing a lot of great growth, so thank you. Additionally, we're seeing, if you, on Riverwood Salon Suites, Victoria's Secret used to be in that space, but as a result, there's actually more sales per square foot of the Riverwood Salon Suites than there is in Victoria's Secret. So it's just these small minor changes, or even moving, have actually increased the sales and the sales tax in Provo. So we're really excited. Again, this is just a small list of what's actually happening. One of the goals of that Mayor Kafusi, when she came into office, was that she wanted to formulate an economic development committee. So that's what we did. We took 6 people from around the community, and we organized an economic development committee. As a result, prior to that committee, we actually introduced a business climate survey done by Economic Development Corporation of Utah. This was a 20-plus page study survey that was done. It was sent out to all the businesses that have a registered business license and email address. And these are the results. The overall, just to summarize it, businesses, they're happy to be in Provo. Obviously, there's some things that we can work on, but their overall attitude is that they're happy to be in Provo. And so from that committee, we analyzed the results, we got some opinions, interpreted the data, and what we plan on doing is, from their recommendation, is to hold quarterly meetings with specific sectors. And so we are now working with our strategic plan committee to kind of identify retail, manufacturing, what specific sectors, how do we go about these quarterly meetings. And so the first one is expected to be first quarter of 19. So we're really excited about that. This is a new thing that just was passed in December of 2017 by President Trump and his signature of the new tax law. Opportunity zones are a great thing that are effectively allowing investors to receive breaks on the capital gains. Because of paying attention to what the new tax law did, our department actually emailed the Governor's Office of Economic Development and said, hey, you should identify these 4 census tracts in Provo. And as a result, we have the bulk in Utah County. American Fork has this tiny little piece, but Provo has pretty much the rest of Utah County. And it covers, to give a brief summation, if an investor has $1 million of capital gains that they sold from stocks, bonds, company, whatever, they can invest those capital gains into an opportunity zone, and they get a tax break, either from 10 to 15%. Any new capital gains from that initial investment is completely tax-free. And so that's, again, everything highlighted in blue is in an opportunity zone. It's all within Provo. In fact, we've actually received several phone calls about opportunity zones, and one individual has said, I have $10 million, I'm interested in Provo. So we're currently talking with them, yes.
Is that just for commercial investment or also for residential investment?
It can be, so Treasury Department it's still a very new program. They're still identifying regulations. To my knowledge, it is for both commercial and residential. And so but some of the regulations are, this is very technical and I can definitely talk about it afterwards, but there's some regulations that are set up. So our office is paying very close attention to these opportunity zones. And in fact, we're hosting a conference come February regarding this and inviting developers, and we're hoping that a developer and a landlord can get together to spur investment and development within Provo. Yes?
How far to the north does that go?
So it goes up to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dixon, I think it's 300 north. So it covers a lot. Obviously, this is Center Street, and I think it goes up to 200 or 300 north. It is on our GIS map, and so if you're interested, by all means, please, you're able to look at that. And again, I can talk more about these opportunity zones and educate you if you so want. We actually have a one-page or two-page summary fact sheet with it that we created. The revolving loan fund, again, thank you. Now, this was done in last year. Council allocated $100,000 for small business loans. There has been a lot of interest in it, but it's a very niche market, and so it takes some time. Again, businesses are very interested in the revolving loan fund. Sometimes they're not qualified. Sometimes we're really early in this, so maybe down the road we can apply for this. But so far we're seeing a lot of interest from it, and it's because of council, so thank you. Just another one of the tools, along with opportunity zones, that's in our toolbox to be able to, again, spur investment and development within Provo. The great things are happening in Mountain Vista. Vanderhall, they are on, this is their showroom, and so they obviously create these awesome three-wheel roadsters. And so they're actually about to complete phase 1 of 7 of their 1 million square foot facility. That's it right there. So phase 1 is right behind them. It's that itty-bitty portion back there, and then it's covering all of that. It is supposed to be done over the next 10 years, and obviously millions of dollars worth of investment. So phase 1 is now completed, or very soon to be complete, and they will manufacture these roadsters in those buildings. So we're bringing auto manufacturing back to Utah, but it's going to be great because it's in Provo, and there's no other auto manufacturers in Provo. So it's a great thing. Another thing, so many of you may have heard about New Skin and their purchase of Elevate Health Sciences. They actually purchased this additional 3.2 acres right there along, and they're paying off this entire piece. So ultimately ended up being about $330,000 back into the fund that we'll be able to do. They're expanding this facility to back here to an additional, and correct me if I'm wrong, 50,000 square feet. With that's phase 1 with an option to phase 2. So again, New Skin is purchased Elevate Health, and so that's a great thing, and that transaction just closed. So we are excited to see what they do, and obviously work and excavation has been done on that piece. Again, that's just another piece of the Elevate Health Sciences. That's the north side, and then this is kind of overlooking it as well. They have to build a retaining wall because that's quite the elevation change from here all the way to Highway 89. Developer Chris McKay is very busy. This is a building that was under development. There's currently the entire building's filled now, and there's 2 tenants in there. One is Maple Mountain. They're a product fulfillment center, and Zumex, which escapes me. I can't remember what they do, so I apologize. I'll have to go back and look at my notes. But nonetheless, it's 102,000 square feet, and it's completely full. So they are generating property tax, and they're generating jobs and for Provo. So it's really exciting. That is actually the finished building. As you can see, parking lot. It's already in operation. That's the Vanderhall building, and this right here, as you can see, recently we applied for EDA grant for $1.8 million. We were awarded the grant, and we're currently out in the RFQ process right now to actually start get design work and feedback and construction management for that. So we're talking with the EDA to actually start construction on the road, and we're hoping to have construction started by spring of 19. As a result, a company, Medic Life, came to us and said, hey, you build a road that connects this south roundabout, hugs the eastern parcel, and connects to 1400 North. We will invest $35 million in building a facility, a campus. And so that's currently still on track, and again, we hope to have that construction started by spring of 19 and hopefully done by the end of 19. So that's kind of my point of the presentation. I'm going to turn it to Chad, but if you have any questions of Mountain Vista or anything else that I've talked about, please feel free to ask.
Just as a real quick side note, what you're seeing most of there south of the Chris McKay building, that's what Sunrock wanted to purchase, which will now be sold to David Hall for $3 million cash. And again, that road will connect, as Cameron said, but it'll also open up about, again, 65 acres of additional development down at Mountain Vista.
So
coming along very nicely.
Mr. Strachan just reminded me that Zumex is a juice maker. So thank you.
Juicer maker.
Juicer. So who's the guy
that's a blend tech guy.
Blend. I
have a question. Who set the boundaries on the economic? What's the opportunity?
So the governor's office did it, and a real quick story. So Chad was paying attention to this, and literally it was on a Saturday or Friday or Saturday. The governor's office was getting ready to submit this to the feds, and Chad became aware of it and contacted them and said, hey, you got to include Provo. So this piece was picked up, and again, there's only 2 in Utah County, and we have this one, and then there's one in Pleasant Grove. Ours is by far larger. I think all of Grand County, which is Moab area, is an opportunity zone. I don't know what all the opportunities are in Grand County, in Moab. But so again, this is a pretty big deal, and because Chad was paying attention, he got it included. But there is more than likely, as you can imagine, because of the other counties and areas that were picked up, it's income related, but the investment and all that has nothing to do with it. They're just trying to spur investment in areas that have lower incomes, and that's why that area was.
These are based on census tracts.
So there's 4 census tracts that were included in this, and so again, when we submitted them to the governor's office, yes.
And that goes all the way down to Springville.
So yeah, Springville actually gets a little benefit, and Utah County, but the majority.
But it's just a small sliver.
But it includes all of Mountain Vista.
Yeah. So we've had several people talk about we're very interested in opportunity zones. So we're just waiting for more regulations from Treasury, and then again, it's a whole long process, but I'm more than happy to talk about it.
Is it hard to change those? Is it impossible to change those? No. I'd like to see something done.
Yeah, those are set.
They're set.
It's a federal requirement.
Yeah, so when the governors submitted it to the Treasury Department looked at it, stamped it, and so now it's set in stone. We can't change it.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
And just further clarification, so those are actual census tracts. They had to be CDBG eligible, low income, qualified tracts. So most of Provo does qualify, but at least I had about 3 hours to figure out which ones we wanted. So I just assumed we would want downtown and East Bay and the Mountain Vista. And then it was either the Mazer neighborhood or next to BYU, so I chose that one. So that was kind of just my decision. So that's the reason why we chose it.
Didn't have a lot of time to react.
Yeah. Also, interesting thing, there was another city so this was all kind of randomly, everyone was playing catch up. There was actually a city that submitted the wrong opportunity zone, and they're very frustrated because they know that piece of property will not be able to develop because the current use will never change. It's an entertainment venue, a large one. So it's really awesome that we have this interest in Provo, especially when we talk about potential reinvestment in East Bay and also potentially in a new city center in downtown. There's high interest in these areas because of these opportunity zones. I can also understand why Dixon wanted me to go second, because I'm now touching the infested PowerPoint presenter. Let's see. Am I going the right direction?
No, you're going. No. Yeah, you're going. Keep going. There you go. Last one.
So downtown, I literally have the best job in the entire world. I get to stay in downtown. when I was in Atlanta for the Economic Development Conference, or International Economic Development Conference, a lot of people pay attention to our social media account, and they just said, you know, where do you come up with all this content and all these cool things that are happening? And I just say, I just go outside and take pictures of what's happening. We have things that just organically happening, which is really cool. And it's also because of the council and your decision making. So this is a really cool project, a really good shot. The Hyatt Place Hotel, which just recently opened up. We just had a ribbon cutting, just over 100 beds, which will support the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Also in the backdrop, you see the district courthouse. It's an amazing addition to our skyline. And right behind it, you can't see it. Actually, you can see it. Yeah, some cool art that people are starting to take notice of. Really provides this beautiful streetscape, a destination. The Convention and Visitors Bureau has actually seen increased interest in holding conventions in downtown because of the proximity of the Hyatt Place. And you probably have also noticed that with the addition of a brand new hotel that the Marriott has now painted their exterior. So it's these little things that add additional value into the downtown. A big project of note that's coming into play is Freedom Commons, this PEG development. It will be really the first opportunity of a large scale leasable Class A office space in the downtown. And not for just one specific user, like we have New Skin, which is a great addition. Here's just kind of a layout. This is all their leasing information. I did not create this, so if anything's wrong, it is PEG's fault or JLL. It kind of shows you what they're looking at, a floor plate. This shows the kind of the phase one of the project, where this will be 200 North, and this is Freedom and 200 West. Here's the Hyatt Place Hotel, and once the federal courthouse or the district courthouse is complete, now Mountain Atlantic MTech will take possession of or assume possession of the building. Hopefully this all does well, and then you'll have additional phases over here, and with apartments in downtown, which here's another kind of a floor plate of the potential leasable office space in one of these towers. Currently, as to my knowledge, not a tenant yet signed, but these are some opportunities. One really cool thing that's happening in our downtown is the interest of residential in the downtown and also a market rate. This is 200 City View Apartments, another PEG project. This is 300 South and the corner of University. You can kind of see the temple right there. It's right now open, ready for business. People are, you can kind of, if you go on the other side of it, on the north side, you'll see there's bicycles and people already calling this place home. Here are some additional projects that are happening. This is Chip Cookies. This is Freedom. And so that building is no mas, it's gone. A lot of people were trying to figure out when the day was coming down, they had, the water shooting it to make sure the dust wasn't going over, and they're trying to figure out what was going on. But a really cool project for more residential. Also, here is the old Laser Commander building. There's a taco place, or excuse me, Laser Assault. We call it Laser Commander in our office. Overlooking, there's the Zions Bank building. So this is across the street from, or kitty corner of Smith's grocery store. This will be townhouses. And then this is not our announcement. This was made by Brennan Fugel at a Utah Valley Chamber of Commerce Executive Summit. But this is a project that was post 2018, before the recession. It was kind of conceptualized of a University Towers. Has now, with the reinvestment, or at least the continuation of a good economy, there is now interest in doing this project again. As you see, most important, the gap stays intact, but you see an opportunity on the flyers that they're putting out, the leasing flyers, office space, potentially some room for a boutique hotel. Boutique hotel would be not one of your traditional chains, but kind of like a Grand American or something like that. I'm not saying that Grand American is interested in this property, but this is just kind of like a conceptual drawing of the University Towers project. Another cool thing about downtown, I'm not sure if you've noticed, but this is something also from the council to applaud. Yes.
Can we go back to that? I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
Yeah. Wrap it.
So we have, is that Wells Fargo there?
Yes. Yes, Wells Fargo is right here. This is the current entry into the parking deck. You have and also you have some additional like the old Allen's camera you probably have seen on Facebook if you pay attention to our Facebook account.
Of course.
That the Allen's camera is moving over to the old Foot Insurance or Front Law Office Insurance Agency, that one. So that's a really good move for them. Have additional parking for them and additional space. Still have a question? I can see it on your face.
Go ahead. Parking, I know that was one of the things that we talked about.
Yeah,
I think we've got 80 stalls or something in there.
Yeah, so Dave, maybe Walter can answer as far as the parking, because I know there's also probably been announced on 100 East Central project, and I don't know if they can both happen based on the parking that they're hoping to have.
The agency has rights to 204 spaces in the Wells Fargo parking structure. And we have committed a portion of those to the 63 East project. And 63 East, the developer was going through 80 East. They asked for a portion of that. In addition, the gentleman that's doing the Red Sky development, McKay Christensen, he is looking to be able to use some of those spaces as well for the parking for his commercial tenants, which would be on the first floor of his project. So this project as well wanted to use whatever was left over in the Wells Fargo space. In addition, they would construct 3 or 4 levels of parking in the tower portion of the project. So as it wraps around, so you may remember that several years ago, the redevelopment agency adopted a disposition and development agreement with University Towers LLC in order to do this, but that relied heavily on the tax increment that was generated by the Central Business District project area, which expired in 2015, and so we have terminated that disposition and development agreement based on the fact that we no longer have the funding mechanism that was anticipated for this project. We've met with Mr. Sears and told him that, delivered the letter to him, so he understands that, but they're now looking at reviving this project. So they would like to be able to use the additional spaces that are left over in the Wells Fargo as well as construct parking for their project.
Okay, so for my question, so this is on that block?
Yes, northeast corner of the intersection.
Would it tear down the current parking garage?
No.
It would fit behind it?
Yeah.
Over it, probably.
Because remember, they're taking out, so this is the edge,
You're
right?
taking out the Allen's camera and the space between.
So from here to here is new space, and right now the existing building probably comes to about right here.
We have that little pocket park.
Again, artistic rendering and probably some artistic license to make it actually.
Plus you've got this piece in here.
Yeah, so this is the vacant piece right now on Center Street where the little hot dog cart has been.
Wow, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes,
Wells
and then
Fargo's going to miss their view of the mountains. Yeah, Rock Canyon. That's Rock Canyon.
And also, this is
okay, gotcha.
This will be over here. This will be where what we're talking about, the Red Sky development, or Blue Sky, depending on who you're talking to at what time. But that is the 2 projects that are competing for the parking. Just really quick, if you've noticed, this is also something to congratulate the council for. Your investment in organizations like Downtown Provo Inc. have really produced added value, leveraging. I cannot imagine managing a public art commission, receiving art, deciding which art to get, and creating these added value in the downtown. These are actually my 2 girls, so we have rights to use those pictures. EPA Brownfields.
No children were harmed.
Yeah, no children were harmed. They did this willingly for a piece of candy. The Brownfields grant, we continue to move forward with that. We have 2 new projects on there. We also have 2 site nominations for some brownfields. Most recently was the old Sears Tire and Auto, and so we're in constant contact, reaching out to people to see if we can help them spend this money to help get an idea of what the condition of the property is and how to remediate it. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Hines.
Hey, just really quickly, as the council will recall, we've done a number of incentive deals. Again, Days Market up on North Canyon. They are now under remodel. The Parkway Village, again, the new Habit Burger right here. This building still to be filled, or that portion of it, and as Gary and Bill had referenced, the new intersection, the four-way intersection on the Parkway, very nice, fully functioning lights, left turns in, out, so that's very nice addition. Again, and this is, again, the Cafe Rio, recently opened, drive-through, expanded dining and outside dining. Again, just another view. You can see that the landscaping is starting to go in on the Parkway as a part of the UVX. Again, the new Target store, if you haven't been, this is a little cameo of Quinn right here. This is actually his doppelganger. Thought that was Quinn when that's why I was pointing to it. There's Quinn, but it wasn't Quinn. It was somebody else. Again, Riverwoods just celebrated their 20 years, and they also are working on, and the council did approve, and we appreciate the incentive package for them, and we should be seeing some stuff on that here shortly. Some of the uses or users that will be coming in, R&R Barbecue will be opening next week. Again, major remodeled AMC. Sue's Cookies is currently open, Seven Brothers open, and Rocky Mountain will be moving to one of the newer locations. Then again, just a press note on the sale of the former Ancestry.com building, a data center facility up in the Riverwoods. This is big. Of course, this was bigger. This, again, don't know how this will wash out. We're hoping and believing that they'll stay here locally. Just yet to be determined, but obviously a big win for Qualtrics. And
you had very nice things to say about Provo in the paper, so hopefully.
Yep, see where it goes. And so we do an annual document called Involved. Provo City was recognized back in Atlanta for a document that we put together that just promotes our community. Town Center Mall, still a lot going on. We are in constant contact with the Brixton Group, with Scott Bowles, they're the manager, and there'll be further discussions on that going into the future, and again, just waiting for them to make some public announcements. The Residence Inn opened up this last summer, that's doing well. Again, another one of the incentive deals for, again, this will be the new Ross, have been in conversations. They're working on a couple of potential tenants of backfilling the space, so they feel very confident that once the Ross opens, that they'll be able to ink the other deals and get that back up to fully functioning again, and no blackouts there.
How big is that Ross compared to the one in the Orem, for example? Is it similar size? It looks a little smaller to me.
Last time I was at the Ross in Orem, I think I was in college. I can't remember.
Okay,
it's probably smaller because it's a retrofit going and filling a vacant space.
But it'll be better. Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, West Side. So, and this was one of the questions I believe that Cliff wanted us to talk about, or the council may have had questions about, was the Davis parcel. So there's actually two pieces to the Davis parcel. I don't know if you go to GIS Web real quick. I apologize for not having it. If
you actually have it on that the opportunity zone slide.
Well, actually, I think it's right there.
West.
No, it's not far enough. Okay. Well, regardless, on the Davis piece, there's two pieces. There's a north piece and there's a south piece. And the new Lakeview Parkway cuts it in half. When the Community Development Department was working on the West Side Master Plan, and when they were working with the committee, our office came and made a presentation, at least one. We had also suggested that the south piece, which is about 40 acres, be included, which again, south of Lakeview Parkway, be included to be considered for residential. Yeah, if you can just zoom in on that. Yeah, just right there, Bryce. The parcel's actually fairly large, and only a portion of it, the northern portion, would really be available for, but not that much.
The mouse is going.
Yeah, so this is the piece right here, the north piece that has been included for commercial with mixed use, and then the south piece we're proposing, and understand that there is potentially a slippery slope. Well, hey, that's development south of the Parkway, and it is, but it's also adjacent to the freeway, and it's the only piece adjacent to the freeway. And so that's why we thought, and it's also on a lit intersection, that would be a piece to allow us to grow the commercial pie in Provo as far as additional or new commercial space. And that's why we
You
propose.
said residential earlier.
Clarify that. Yes, this is for commercial uses, I'm sorry, if I said residential. So the top piece, if there's some residential on that with the mixed use of commercial, fine. We would see this as commercial only, not residential. And so the general plan, what we're requesting, we presented that to the Planning Commission as a side note. It has been on the map. And being at the last council meeting, there were at least one council or one neighborhood person who was concerned about that. There may be others, but that's what that is.
How much of that parcel is usable for?
So really probably just the north half, this portion right here, which is about 40 acres. The parcel is probably closer to 80 acres in size. So back on our slide, I also had talked about Smiths. We do, again, continue to have regular conversations with them. Mayor Kafusi has met the Smiths person. Dave and I continue to talk with the Smiths person. We'll see where that goes.
He's been encouraging, but I don't know, has he always been encouraging?
Now again, interestingly enough, at the last council meeting, the Bach Homes representative, who has, I guess, an option on the Davis piece, said that there was a grocer or a market that was interested. We've tried to reach out to the broker that they mentioned, have not heard anything back. Again, how real that is, I don't know. We'd love to know more about it, but some people keep those things pretty tight-lipped, and so we haven't heard anything more.
In the neighborhood report, that I guess Bach Homes was at their neighborhood, and so there was a lot of questions and answers. And I think one of the questions was into, and they didn't divulge their identity, but they did specify that it was not a, quote, full-service grocer like Smith's. I even think they quoted Smith's. But it sounded like it was more than a convenience store. And
yeah, I think if they bring in a dollar store or something, there's going to be a lot of disappointed people, unhappy people.
Yeah, so I'm hoping we have sufficient information to make a good decision.
Yeah, so right now, as a reminder, this is a general plan only. The zoning is not there. They'd still have to come in and ask for that, and you can grill them on that, and so.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. I think we're pretty much done. Oh, medical school, golf course. You'll be hearing more about that as they bring in their request for housing on this piece right here. Quite a number of units, and I've talked to them about that. And they feel that the need for the medical school and Rocky Mountain University would warrant that number of units. Again, the majority of which would be for their students, but it would be market rate. And then just the last thing, if the slide works, Duncan, these are their hangars coming along. They'll be taking their first jet in January for service. It's already scheduled. Again, the two hangars, these are the service bays, paint hangars right here, and then these are our support facilities. This one right here, those are support facilities. That's, you're looking at $7 million worth of concrete right there, just so you know. Those are doors.
I wonder what it looks like. Wow.
Those are doors.
Can we paint some pickleball courts on that?
Possibly. Again, you've seen this slide before, but one of the things that we try to move the needle on is this number right here, and it's projects like Duncan that we think that will help us get there eventually. Again, this is a comparison to Utah County, and for those people older than 50, that's 27% as opposed to 11% on the poverty rate. Again, our age, a little bit younger, but you look, then again, look at our median household income, $42,000 versus $70,000, huge difference. Even though our median property value, again, I think that number is probably higher in certain segments. For maybe not necessarily, starter or mid-level, but again, and again, you can see that our employment base, and obviously we're a major portion of that number right there. And this is another fascinating one. We'll just leave with this note right here. So Provo, this is the amount of sales that take place in a community. Provo is the third largest community, and we're number 13. Now these are, tell me what this number is again, Chad. This is the
Total taxable sales.
Total taxable sales, okay, and that's $1 trillion, okay, that's $1.3 trillion, Salt Lake City at 7.6 trillion. Trillion, sorry. Just get crazy with zeros, okay? But the point is that Provo, all these communities do better than us, and on any given month, we will beat half of these. Okay, these are annual sales, and so we have the opportunity to do some things on the margins, but we could probably close a lot more deals if you wanted to write a check, and I'm not advocating. I think we've been prudent. I think we've been good. There's probably some other things that we'll need to look at to close other deals, but this number right here compared to some of the others, you know, it's really more of a, right now it's a quality of life issue of, hey, do we have to leave town? So we can now buy a soccer ball in Provo with the Target Express. Hope to buy others. But I mean, this is just a number that's kind of sobering. And again, to the extent that we can move the needle on this, we can and we will. And we appreciate the council's participation where it makes sense. But there are some deals that we may have to pass on because it's just too rich. And then that's okay. It's a conscious decision. So, any questions of me or of our staff?
Just thank you. It's looking good.
Bryce?
Was there some, you see Salt Lake County's budget 32.99, but some of the Salt Lake County cities are higher? Is that any of that because that was taken into those areas? Is there any of that?
That's the only unincorporated.
That's the unincorporated. So that's like Kearns, Magna.
I understand that, but I'm wondering if any of those Salt Lake County cities took any of those.
Yeah, don't know.
Yes. Don't know. As cities continue to grow and incorporate, then they live.
Part of it's the incorporation of Mill Creek last year, and so some of those got subtracted out of Salt Lake County.
Yeah. Were you alluding? I mean, what can we do? I felt like you were alluding to, you said cutting a check. What is it you feel our role is in helping?
When we bring you a deal to analyze it, we'll give you our recommendation. We'll give you a strong recommendation of this one is not worth it, it's too much, or this one, we think this is something that we could or should do. And again, so just to put this a finer point on it, back in 2010, the city was very close to purchasing a piece of ground for $3 million, giving that to Target, giving a portion of the golf course to Target, plus 25 years of tax increment to get a Target deal, and we would be paying for the relocation of the golf course. We passed on that. Now you can still debate whether that was a good idea or not, but the point is, and I'm not beating up the council, I think it was probably the right decision to make. That was just too rich of a deal, and we passed on it.
Did we pass it, or it was kind of mutual, wasn't it, at that point?
We passed, and then Target decided to take their money and go to Canada, and everybody knows how that turned out.
Yeah.
But the point is that these deals are complex, but they, at some level, the bigger ones typically require some kind of involvement with funding, and when there's funding involved, the council will be involved.
And those numbers that you showed about median income and so on,
Yep.
and so things like the unfortunate loss of Trader Joe's and other when a company is looking at this area, but they're thinking, you know, Orem or Provo, and they don't really have a strong reason to go one or the other unless they have some. I mean, are we? I'm asking a very vague and philosophical question, I guess, but I'm just curious to know how much can we do with those numbers, or do we really have to focus our attention on improving the median household income and improving the poverty rate so that we're in a stronger position?
So the short answer
or
is
yes. Is it better to just say, no, we'll throw the kitchen sink at every offer that comes to get them here, and that will help those numbers?
No, because even thinking about the Nordstrom deal in Orem, that lasted 10 years because that's how long the incentive was, and even some of those deals don't pencil at the end of the day. And so, no, it doesn't make sense to always throw money at. Money can help, funding can help, but if the deal, for example, we could build Smith's a new store and do all that stuff, but if the market's not there for them to continue and sustain it, then they'll just close in a short amount of time, and that's what
It's the operational.
Yeah, it's the operational portion of it.
And that's why you're also talking about the mix here, isn't it? So that we can get those other numbers.
So we have housing that goes right there next. Most bigger commercial projects will have housing components either in them or next to them.
So that chart was sobering. I knew we were lagging, but I didn't know we were lagging that much. I think just a couple caveats though. I mean, that's total taxable. That's not.
That's right.
Actual, because a lot of that has been given away. And then it's only sales tax. That's only one aspect of how we generate revenue for the city. And I would say that there's a number of, I mean, I love having Quinn back here because he's the best cheerleader there is, but there's a number of communities on there that, you know, they might say, oh yeah, I'm glad we have this, but oh boy, I wish we had this approval, I wish we had that approval. So let's be aware of this, but then also let's keep it in mind.
Yeah, you got to keep it in context for sure.
Just be thankful for Provo Power.
Yes.
That makes up the difference. Provo Power makes up the difference between what you see in Orem and more so than what you see in Provo. Now Provo Power, that's almost $80 million.
Another consideration is how dependent a lot of these economies are on the economy.
Yeah.
Because if there's an ebb and a flow, suddenly they got to lay off all their employees because that's their primary income.
We are sustainable
versus Provo Power, right?
Yeah. We're sustainable. We're the government, you know, the seat of government. We're the seat of education. We're the center of business. We're the center of culture.
Healthcare.
Healthcare. Just right now, not sales.
So real quick, when you show the percentage change column, and looks like we're doing as well as most on the 5.66%.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And then this doesn't really tell me how much of Orem's sales tax might be. Have they given away a portion of that to businesses?
Yes, this is just a snapshot, small picture. There's probably, you know, much more that could or should be said about it. We just wanted to show in context kind of how things are in this particular area. Again, this is not a new number. It's probably been this way for many years. But you can see that, again, you just think about any of those communities, you know, just think about what's in that community and what's not.
So I'm just saying that whether it be property tax or sales tax incentives, Orem has paid a price to get their number that high.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because they are paying a price to get the number that high, you could kind of discount it and say, well, we're at 1.4, they're at 2.4, but in reality, we're closer than that appears.
I wouldn't get tipped over about the number. I mean, again, the market will be what it is. Where we have the ability to impact it, we should. And the rest of it, we just feel good about our community if we truly do, and let's change what we don't like.
Dixon, thank you so much. Appreciate your time here and coming in. We've got one item before we go into a closed session we do have scheduled today. Item number 7, a discussion of an ordinance to amend the zone map classification. And Aaron Ardmore, will you take that?
Yep.
All right, so I've been here before on this item. So we went back to Planning Commission and figured out a couple things. They have come back with different zone requests. They're requesting the RA zone, when before, you might remember, they were requesting the A1 zone. To alleviate concerns of the neighborhood with the RA zone request, they've provided a development agreement that both takes away any additional animal rights more than an R1, and now they've also added that it would take away any of the conditional uses of that RA zone. There are some conditional uses that some people were concerned about that could potentially happen, so those are now in the development agreement that they would not be able to happen.
So those were essentially commercial, correct?
Yeah, commercial operations essentially. Yeah. So with those changes, the plan is still the same. The concept is still the same for the zone change. Nothing's changed on the actual layout. It's just the rules of what can happen within that layout. So that's the update. That's what you'll see tonight. I don't know if you have any questions for me or anything I should prepare.
Is there a second page to that?
Yes.
There's multiple pages, but that's the...
A is the animal rights, and then 4A is the animal rights, and 4B, I don't know if we have the next page. 4B is the conditional uses. And I noticed earlier that the correct development agreement is not in the work session materials, but it is in the council materials. So.
The developer did, this consultant came in and met with me today and handed in a 12-lot subdivision plat to show how you could actually get 12 buildable lots around the fault lines and around the slopes. And Aaron will have that to show you this evening if you'd like to see it. But 12 single-family homes could be built on the property if it was given R1A zone, R110 zone. Great. Keep going down. Keep going down. Right there. Right there. Right here. Just go up a little bit to the top of that.
So those are the conditional uses that were taken off of the RA zone.
Those are all the conditional uses in the RA zone. Thank you.
Are they happy with this, Aaron? Are they content?
Yeah, the applicant and the property owner have agreed to these conditions. They're happy to sign up on that.
From the neighborhood chair as of yesterday.
That's great. Thank you for that, for the work you did on that. Okay, we have a request to go for a closed session. Brian,
yeah, so there's two items. Wayne, are they both for the redevelopment agency, yes, or the one each? Yeah. Oh, okay, so and the reason why I think it's probably important when we make the motion to make clear that it is the board of the redevelopment agency that is making the motion to go into closed session. There are two items, one involving a potential purchase of property and one involving a potential sale of property. And so long as the statutory requirements are met, those are appropriate reasons for having a closed meeting. So I think it would be appropriate to have that motion, and then we can discuss those further in the closed meeting.
thank you. In the motion then, whoever makes it, if they would close the council meeting, to adjourn the council meeting, reconvene as the redevelopment agency in closed session.
Yeah,
in the closed session.
So moved. Go ahead. I so moved. I'll happily second.
Okay, those in favor? That's unanimous. We will converse with your chair. Excuse, thank you. We will meet in the other room.